for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome today, January 27th, to the special meeting of the Historic Preservation Board. Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Member Hurley?
Here.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Daschle?
Here.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Here.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Okay, first order of business is the approval of the agenda, which is a very brief, well, it's only a one-issue action item today, unless there's someone who wants to add anything, I guess, for discussion. Anybody on the board have any interest in adding anything to the agenda?
I do not.
Okay, well, then we can go forward. Anybody, and then I will move to approve the agenda for today, January 27th, 1926.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Chair Hurley? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Member Hurley? Member
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so let's move on to the next part is audience comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience to make a comment. Normally, we kind of have two situations here where you can wait if you want to comment on a particular action item. In this case, since there's only one action item, this would probably be the appropriate time for you to comment on the action item for today. You also have the opportunity to make just an audience comment in general on any other matter that you think is important, and you have 3 minutes to do that. Would anybody like to make a comment at this time? Okay, seeing none.
Swearing in. Actually, Dave.
Oh, okay.
And just swearing in.
I'm sorry. You need to swear in the, like we normally do?
We don't have to for just a general comment. This isn't on the item.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know if it is or isn't. Is this a general comment, or is this a comment on the item itself?
It would just be, I guess, a general comment.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Dave Feinberg, 1407 Pass-a-Grille Way, St. Pete Beach. I just wanted to kind of make a comment on 8th Avenue CRDEA, just a timeline, because I think it helps with historic timeline. From what I've looked everything up and from keeping records, the CRDEA by the Historic Board was approved in August 26, 2008. And there was also a time when we were asked to be part of the CRDA, which, Brandon, you had asked me that, so I understand the question better now. When did we get into the CRDA? We applied in 2017, so it was actually 9 years after the CRDA was brought up. And we had owned the property that you have in question today, which is 702 Pass-a-Grille Way. We had purchased it in 2004. But I just think the timeline is important. The CRDA wasn't just put together quickly, and it wasn't as if there was a chronological order that had advantages to anybody. It was just over a long process of time. There was, when we had joined the CRDA in 2017, originally we were asked to join the CRDEA, and that was in 2012, August 28th, when the 701 Gulfway apartments or condos were ROR. They were asked to be part of the CRDA to make them conform with transient rentals when they had sold the condos. And because we were a similar property but to the east at 702 Pass-a-Grille Way, they asked us to join. We were probably one of the only homes that were ROR that could go to CRDA, and we declined at that time because it was our house. We thought we'd probably live there forever, and sometimes you don't. So we decided to go ahead and take the opportunity to apply for CRDEA actually 5 years later. And then slowly over time, it probably took, maybe 8 years to get everything to where we are today. So I just wanted to bring that up, some chronological order of when CRDEA started and why it was done. Thank you.
Can I ask a question or two? Please, sorry, Dick. So I think I know what you mean, but when you say we applied, you mean as a property owner of 702 or
Property owner.
property owner of 102, 8th Avenue?
That was 2 years later in 2006, we purchased that.
Right, so when the CRD, when they started talking about creating the CRD, you owned all those properties right
Yes,
there, right?
yes.
Okay,
2 years apart. 2004, we purchased 702 Pasquarilla. 2006, we purchased 102 8th Avenue. 2008, we vacated the alley.
Right.
And why? Just because we're the only property surrounding it, and everybody come in off 8th Avenue to turn around on 8th Avenue, go through our property, turn around, and go back out. So, and at one time when we first purchased it, Bill, there was a mechanism to stop people from coming in, and it would go up, but people would drive through it, and we just took it out. So, we purchased those properties at that, we being my wife and I. So,
okay, so, and just because, I'm glad you're coming up so we can ask some of these questions, I appreciate that. So, but when the CRD began to be talked about in 2006, you owned all those properties, right?
yeah, well, yes, correct.
Okay, and you were involved in understanding how the CRD was being put together, being one of the primary property owners on 8th Avenue, which, as you know, is only a block long.
Right.
Right, okay. And so you said you were asked to join when 701 Gulf Way was added to the CRD because you were there was something unique about the property at 702? What was
Yeah.
unique about that?
Yeah, well, what was unique was 701 Gulf Way was ROR, and they cover all of Gulf Way up to where the Brass Monkey is. We were the same on the east side, across from the Mary Pier. We were ROR as a house. They were apartments as residential. And at that time, I guess 7th Avenue was ROR, 8th was CRDA, and we were in between, and so was Gulf Way. When Gulf Way was sold as a condo development, they applied to be part of the CRDA, and I guess for some reason they were approved. We were asked at that time. I wasn't interested because I think it was years before the city had tried to do I don't remember the date, but a mandatory historical. They were just putting that on you without any choice. I think a lot of people got upset and said, I don't want to be told that we're historic. And so I think at that time, maybe there wasn't a total amount of trust. So when I was offered that, I didn't really see any advantage in it because we lived there. I didn't want to be non-conforming by saying yes to something. I think I didn't trust.
Okay.
I didn't trust the approach.
But the house next to you, that on Pasquarilla Way, I don't know if that's 700 Pasquarilla Way or whether that's
I think it's-
101 7th, I don't know how
our front is 702 Pasquarilla Way. I guess
Right.
that's my point, is I support what they're looking for on their variance request because the front is 702 Pasquarilla Way. We own the home 20 plus years. There is an alley access, which is correct, but all the time I owned it, I could only get a small car in there and then back all the way out because there's a utility pole in the middle. But the point I would really clearly make is that was always the back. And if the garage was gone, you would have some access. But there's a garage door on the alley, and there's never been a car in 100 years that had come through the alley and got onto that property because there's a garage there. It doesn't have a garage door on both ends, just on the alley side only. So I guess if you tore it down, you'd have options to do something different.
Well, I mean, but obviously, what's happening today, they are proposing to tear it down.
That would probably,
Right.
give you a little bit more accessibility, but you might want to take a look. to see and I still own property around it, and I just would tell you that I don't think you can get a vehicle through there that would say be an emergency vehicle.
Okay, well, now we're talking more specifics and not general comments, and so, but,
Yeah.
okay, but.
That's why I wanted to be.
Yeah, I understand that, but also the property that when you had it was zoned ROR,
Yep.
and it made sense because it was a residence that you would have a driveway on Paso Girl Way.
Yeah.
When you asked to rezone it,
I didn't ask. Basically, Bill, we bought a property well before you did CRDA, right? So we owned it before CRDA was created. And we know why,
yes,
some of us remember why CRDA was created.
yes.
But I will tell you, we owned it before then. And so I guess, did we get a benefit because it became CRDA? If we did, then we chose what was best for the properties.
I understand that. but
Okay, that's good.
When you chose, no one made you rezone it. You decided to rezone it in 2018, right?
Yes,
And
correct.
So when you rezoned it, you rezoned it with the rules of the CRD, which I would assume you were familiar with since you've been there for years and years and were part
Yes.
and parcel of creating, or had knowledge of the CRD. So when you rezoned it, you knew it came with an alley access requirement.
I guess it already had it.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, and so.
But that's why
and
we
so-
vacated the alley
in
too.
rezoning it to CRD, you are allowed to build 17 units instead of a bed and breakfast with 6 units.
Yeah.
Right, and so your decision was to rezone it to get the advantage of being able to build 17 units, thereby making your property more valuable. But you also had to accept the fact that it was alley access only. Because otherwise, that's the only piece of property in the CRD that you would argue doesn't have alley access.
Yeah, being when you own real estate, if you're wise, you pay attention to what's going on and you want your investment to be worth more. That's generally the goal. The purpose of the Valley, being vacated on 8th Avenue that came through our property was because that made really good sense to come in and to go out. When we were selling our property and people were opposed to it,
When you say selling our property, what piece of property are you talking
we were selling the whole parcel back when there was a development was going to be the Holloway.
Okay, gotcha. So the whole,
Yeah.
and I don't mean to.
And that helped. Bill, we had our house for sale for 2 years and nobody wanted to purchase it because it had this lovely old home on it. Then we decided after the CRDA was years down the road, I'm just saying there was no immediate put together plan.
I understand.
If you understand that, then let me proceed.
Okay.
Then we decided to sell our house. That gives people options, right? So at that point, our house didn't sell. Why didn't it sell? At that time, it probably seemed like it was too expensive, and it was an old home on a big parcel. So what did we do? We went from let's try and sell it, let's try and come up with different ideas. The final thing was, with the roads being done, let's move the house. So we moved the house. And then we sold the property, and it was more attractive without a house on it, which is too bad. But we didn't tear the house down. We saved it, we moved it, we lost historic status because we elevated it. We did all the right things, but that was Plan D. When you live in a world of changing events, you try to pick Plan A, you try to pick Plan B. That one wound up being, well, let's move the darn house. It actually wound up being terrific for us. And then the property was sold, and I can go into that if you want, but I don't want to take too much time. But basically, the property was sold at that time with options. And basically, I'm just saying, I know where the front was because I lived there. And if it was a bonus that it came with an alley in the back, that's pretty cool. I have no idea what the advantage of disadvantages of having an alley in the back. It didn't seem like an advantage to me.
Well, I mean, I guess the question would be, is when you own both pieces of property and they create the CRD, which has a requirement of alley, if you're on the alley, at that time you owned the piece of property that formerly had an alley that you vacated it, that was, I believe, an entrance to the house at 702. And so that was a decision you made to vacate that alley, and then when the CRD was formed, then you had to use the alley. And then when you decided to move your house and sell it and decided to, I love your house, it's a great thing you did moving it. I can't give you enough credit for that, so don't get me wrong about any of that kind of stuff. But when that decision was made, you still had a piece of property, like you said, the Holloway scenario, where there's all three pieces there where 702 could still get access from 8th Avenue, like it did when it had an alley there.
When you're close to being accurate. When we purchased both properties, there was a fence separating the properties. A 3-foot gate was where the alley was. So there was no entrance in from the vacated alley. And there still never was, but we left a gate there. We pretty much vacated it to make it easier use for 102 8th Avenue, not for some grand plan to build something.
But the Holloway ultimately was a grand plan.
And that didn't happen.
I understand that.
Right.
But at the time that was put together, there was an entrance off 8th Avenue through that area there.
Not to come into our 702 property, you're wrong.
Well, because the 702 property had a building on it.
No, the 702 had a fence all the way down the property, which it still has.
The Holloway plan
Okay,
does include that whole area, including 702.
right.
And on that Holloway plan, the entrance came off 8th Avenue through your property that you owned all into 702.
Just for the record, for you to know,
Yes.
and you can always look back at it, I wasn't part of the Holloway project. I was selling the property, okay? And so I would realize that people were disappointed how big it was, okay? But I don't study it, or I just hope the damn thing would sell.
Okay, but okay.
But seriously, I'm not looking at where things are coming in and going out.
Dave, follow me here, though, okay?
I will.
Okay, fine. So you weren't involved in that. What I'm saying is, when it was a joined piece of property, you didn't need alley access at 702.
What do you mean it was joined? I don't
When
understand.
702 and 102, as the Holloway project you would have sold those properties
Yeah,
together.
never happened though,
I
right?
understand that.
Right.
But at the time that was happening,
Right?
okay, it made sense for 702 to be in CRD, because it didn't need to use the alley, because it could use the property for 102. When the Holloway fell apart and you decided to sell those separately,
Only
then 702, either it should have reverted, or you should have said, well, I have to use the alley now.
No, you know why?
Well, that's what, you know.
Yeah, Bill, basically in July 2017, we applied for the CRDA. It took 1 year. If we had taken it at the beginning when we were asked, we would have done nothing. We had to do a final approval by the commission after many readings, months, February 13th, 2018. The city of St. Pete Beach approved it. We had to change the ROR to CRDA. We had to go to Pinellas County Forward to change the future land use map, change the zoning map. It all took a long time for no reason other than it seemed like it could be an advantage. And in selling, Bill, all I do is buy and sell properties that I hope don't go down in value. That's the simple plan.
And I
Rent them cheap.
I understand that entirely, okay? Part of the issue here on variance, okay, that if my understanding is correct, the city, we have to,
Chairman, if we're going to be getting into this, let me
Okay.
stop and go back and
We need to do a
swear this
swearing in.
witness, because this is getting into the actual
all right,
application.
all right, well, then let's do that.
Dave, I'm sorry, but
No
you
problem
kind of went
whatsoever. I'm
beyond
sorry.
general into specific facts, so
sir.
have the clerk swear your testimony that you've already done, and then
Okay.
the testimony if you have any more.
Yes, sir.
Would
Thank
you like everyone who's testifying today to just go ahead and
Let's do it all at
testify at
once, yeah.
once? Okay, anyone who will be speaking or testifying before the board needs to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
So sworn.
Thank you very much. Sorry to take up so much.
No, it's okay.
No, it's going to take a little while, and I appreciate what the information you've been giving us. But what I'm saying is, one of the things under section 312 on general variances they have a list of 8 things that have to be all followed and met and satisfied by substantial competent evidence, okay? So these are all issues, okay? And one of the issues that has to be met for a variance is the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the action of the applicant or a prior owner of the property. And so my question is, or when you rezoned it, whenever that was,
Yes.
or however long it took to do that, when you rezoned it, you knew there was a requirement the alley access had to be used.
No, I didn't know that.
Okay, all right, if that's your
And
testimony,
the
that's
truth
fine.
and nothing but the truth. But the funny thing is, I'm mainly here to say that I know where the front is, or where it always has been. I don't really look into the details of where you think it might be or where it should be, and that's just part of planning. That's what you do. But I will say this, I was just here to support where I think the front is. I'm also here to support development of 8th Avenue responsibly because we need it. It's slow, and I totally welcome development if it's done with a lot of care. So
Okay.
I didn't really mean to get into it.
No, I
in
understand.
this much
Well,
detail.
it's important, like I say, it's relevant because of what I just mentioned as being a condition. And I don't know if you watched these previous things, we're not against development. We're just,
No,
but we want responsible development, and you've seen what.
Chairman, I think we can move into the actual.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Feinberg, appreciate it. And there may be a situation, you may want to come up and say something again if something comes up. Yeah, feel free, thank you. Okay, so now I guess we're moving on to action item, the recommendation on the Board of Adjustment case number 25142 for 702 Pass Girl Way. Mr. Berry?
Morning, Brendan Berry, planner. Just staff has a brief presentation. The applicant is also present. They do have some materials they may wish to share. The applicant owner for this case is Agent Tecklenburg, agent of 702 Pass Girl Way LLC. The property address is 702 Pass Girl Way. They're requesting a variance to allow the retention and expansion of a driveway access from Pass Girl Way following redevelopment of 702 Pass Girl Way. This request is made pursuant to Land Development Code Section 40.11. At the City Commission meeting 2 weeks ago, the City Commission assigned this pursuant to the board duties and responsibilities to make a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment on this request. This is a survey of the property. It's recent, showing existing conditions. You can see on the right, which is on the east side of the site, the subject curb cut. It is approximately 17 feet in width at the property line. The property does retain a public alley access on the west side. It is a 10-foot platted alley that was platted with the neighborhood. That does remain in place. It is slightly encumbered. I would estimate about 9 feet of drivable width in that alleyway, but it does still exist. It does terminate at the west side of the property, and that is a platted public 10-foot alley. This is the proposed site plan for new development. This is the basis for which the request is being made. As mentioned before, pursuant to Land Development Code Section 40.11, following redevelopment, any existing access for a property that has alleyway access, which this property retains through its 10-foot alleyway, needs to be eliminated. The applicant has proposed to move forward with a request to retain and slightly expand that access. The existing drive, as I mentioned before, is approximately 17 feet in width at the property line. The proposed drive will be approximately 20 feet in width at the property line. The Historic Preservation Board does see variances, but they are typically to the floodplain management criteria. You also make recommendations on variances for locally designated historic structures. That is not part of the subject request. However, this request has been assigned under the unnecessary and undue hardship variance criteria for recommendation to the Board of Adjustment. There are 8 criteria. They are on your screen. Staff has also provided a copy of the staff report that was provided to the Board of Adjustment and will be reviewed in more detail with the board tomorrow. Going through the criteria briefly, criteria 1, there are special conditions and circumstances that exist that are peculiar to the land structure or building involved, which are not applicable to other land structures or buildings in the same zoning district. Criteria 2, the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the action of the applicant or a prior owner of the property. Item 3, literal interpretation of the provisions of the Land Development Code deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of the Land Development Code and result in an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. Criteria 4 is not typically relevant. The state of Florida does not allow for use variances, so if one of these cases is brought forward, the request is typically found in compliance with criteria 4, but the hardship has not been deliberately or knowingly created or suffered to establish a use or structure which is not otherwise consistent with the comprehensive plan or land development code, nor will it permit an increase in development density. That is a specific local prohibition. We do not allow for variances that request increases in development density. That is not applicable to this subject request. Item 5, an applicant's desire or ability to achieve greater financial return or maximum financial return from his property does not constitute hardship. This would be for a case in which the only justification for a variance is effectively to create a return on value for the property. If that is the sole basis for a variance request, that is typically not a basis for a hardship variance. Criteria 6, granting the variance application conveys the same treatment to the applicant as to the owner of other lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning district. Criteria 7, the requested variance is the minimum variance that makes possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. And criteria 8 is multiple components, but it's the requested variance is not in harmony or is in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the comprehensive plan and land development code, is not injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public safety and welfare, is compatible with the neighborhood, and will not substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. The Board of Adjustment typically takes 3 actions in acting on a case. They always have the option to continue for more information, but when they take action on a case, typically it is to approve with conditions, or deny the request. When there are conditions assigned, there are typically a basis for the assignment of conditions. Most conditions are subject to the rational basis review. They must be tied to a legitimate government interest. They cannot be arbitrary or capricious. Aesthetics alone are not typically viewed as sufficient in the state of Florida for a condition, but can be considered in tandem with other government interests. For example, when this board is making recommendations on historically designated resources, aesthetics in combination with character of the historic district is a consideration on which you can base a recommendation. We don't typically see exactions with variances. They have been applied before, but they are fairly uncommon. We tend to see those more frequently with conditional use permits. When there is a condition that results in an exaction where something is taken, whether that's a dedication of land, money, otherwise, they must be connected to a legitimate public purpose, and they must be roughly proportionate to the impact of the request being made. So talking about today's meeting, I just wanted to outline what staff desires to be the next steps. Based on board discussion, we plan to prepare a written recommendation that will be drafted and approved by the members prior to meeting adjournment. That may be a narrative, that may be points that we share with you. We just want to make sure that at least the majority of the board, 4 of the 5 members, are in agreement with the recommendation that will be made to the Board of Adjustment. The request will proceed to the Board of Adjustment at tomorrow's meeting. Staff will relay your recommendation at that meeting. The site plan for this development is currently under review. The applicant may proceed with development after variance decision is rendered. This variance case is not necessarily contingent on the request being approved. This is not a case that requires parking on site, with the exception of 1 parking space. There is access to the alleyway, so this does not necessarily affect the site plan that is currently under review. The variance is separate from, but does affect the actual layout and the design of the site plan. That being said, I'm happy to answer questions. We do have the applicant present. They do have some materials they may wish to share with the board.
Can you go back just a second? A couple of screens back was you said condition. It was a thing under conditions, I think. Requirements for conditions. Now, where does that come from? Where's the authority for that?
Those are typically the dual rational nexus test, I believe.
They're all case law?
Okay. And so, thank you, Mr. Brooks. And so the third bullet point there's aesthetics alone are not typically viewed as sufficient, but can be considered in tandem with other government interests such as character and historic districts. So that's something that and that's when we're talking about if we were to make a recommendation to grant the variance, that would be a condition that could potentially go with it. Is that my understanding?
Correct. There can be conditions assigned to variances. They do need to meet those minimum criteria to be applicable to the request. And City Attorney, we were talking about the typical board responsibilities and reviewing locally designated resource variances. Aesthetics in combination with the character of the district can be considered based on those criteria. Do you feel that that would be applicable in this case as a recommendation?
Yeah, two things. There's the 28.14, which are your criteria that you utilize as the Historic Preservation Board. And then also in the staff report for the Board of Adjustment variance, at the end summary, there's 3 conditions that staff recommend. I think there's one, number 2, which is about landscaping aesthetics. The other 2 are more legitimate government interests about right turn only and the parking tags that it would be issued. You'll see the staff's recommending 4 conditions.
Those conditions are for the proposed development project, though, right? Not necessarily conditions for this 3-foot addition on the,
So,
Those conditions are for the Board of Adjustment approval of this variance. When you look at the staff report for the Board of Adjustment on this variance, at the very end it says summary, and then there's a 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the conditions that staff will be recommending tomorrow to the Board of Adjustment.
and that is strictly for the approval of this 3-foot variance to the expansion of the driveway
Yes.
and the curb cut.
Wait, no, it's not for the extension. It's the grant access period from past Girl Way.
It's for this variance application.
Right, which
Code
is,
requires that access be provided to an alley if you're in a abutting property, so they're asking for a variance from that and instead providing access through the Casa Grill that's shown on the
Right.
site.
Right, I understand, but
And-
there's already a
and-
17-foot curb cut and access on the front on Pasagra Way, and they're asking to maintain that and add an additional 3 feet, correct?
Right.
That is correct.
It's essentially 2 variances from the standpoint of using the 17-foot one and then secondarily making it wider.
And then not using the alley. The requirement of the code is they use the alley.
Right.
So the variance would be to not use the alley, instead use the Casa Grill entrance and make it 3 feet wider. And not to use the alley at all.
And not considering the historical use of the driveway from Pasagra Way.
I think that's part of your consideration, that it's existing.
Oh, okay, just so we're clear on this, everybody, when it was rezoned to CRDEA, it says if you abut an alley, you shall use the alley for access. So that's what the variance is, to get away from not having to do that. Yes, it has a driveway, but that was when it was zoned ROR. It could have a driveway then. It was a residence. It made sense. When it was rezoned, it changes where the entrance is supposed to be from. Now, but the bigger point that because I want to make sure we
I think,
know.
Bill, I think we want to make sure we don't go too far without hearing from the applicant.
Sure.
So maybe we could hear from the applicant and the justifications they have, and they'll walk through the history that's.
Okay, but also, before we get to that, because Brandon, you had mentioned in your reports that there was some questions out there to the applicant, and my question is, do we have any new information from when you prepared this? It looked like at the technical review committee, you talked about some things that the applicant was maybe going to
Sorry, what?
make some decisions about, and so I'm just asking whether there's been any new information.
They're making a recommendation to the board.
I have not received any new information. I believe at the technical review committee, it was mentioned that the applicant was going to speak to their partners about the landscaping buffer recommendation specifically. They might be able to share that information today. And
Well, there's also a part about parking passes and things of that nature, and ability to buy, purchase adjoining property, or get an easement from the property next to them, that where the alley was before. And so all those questions we don't have an answer for. Is that
well,
correct?
I believe the applicant did answer those to staff at Technical Review Committee, and to my knowledge, they were not planning to review those in any more detail prior to the Board of Adjustment. If they have any additional details on either of those items, they're welcome to share it, but I believe we are up to speed on both those.
So just so I can know, so where we are today is just no changes to what they asked for and when they filled out the application for the variance.
Correct. It's the same request as.
Let's hear from the applicant, because actually the applicant should be answering those questions. Okay, if we could just stick to the
Good morning.
questions for Brandon, not for the applicant right now.
Does expanding the curb cut at the street I had 4 feet, is it 3 feet or 4 feet? And my question is, by expanding that curb cut to have the flares take away from any street parking?
Well, there's currently at least one, speaking with Public Services, there's at least one, likely 2
So
spaces that could be
Possibly
established.
1 to 2 spaces,
Correct.
okay. And you might not know the answer to this, but what is the practicality of relocating that utility box and the utility pole that are right at the property line, almost at the property line, right behind 702, that might impede using that alley as an entry or exit?
I don't
know how hard that is to move a utility box and a pole.
Well, looking at the survey, they are very modest encroachments. I believe they're around a foot if I measured correctly. So the encroachment into that 10-foot alleyway is very small. It's 1/10, but it's about a foot. The practicality of it, I'm not sure. I haven't spoken with Duke about that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. I'm Brandon Tecklenburg, one of the owners of 702 Pass-a-Grill Way. I'd like to start off, there's a couple people who are new here today that haven't been at the other meetings we've had. And so I just wanted to let you guys know what we've done in the past, myself and my partner. Brandon, I don't know how to work this amazing machine, but I wanted to go to the historic properties that, yeah, thank you. So I want to make it clear, because there was a couple things that were said here. One was said that we're not builders, we're not contractors, or not a company that's going to build a property on our lot. What we have done over the last 10 plus years is save a lot of homes, save businesses in Pass-a-Grill that are historic. We love Pass-a-Grill, and the body of work here, I don't know if I can work this, but we'll see. Sure, I figured, yes, thank you. So from First Avenue in Pass-a-Grill to 32nd Avenue, we have repaired, remodeled, fixed up dozens of properties. I'm going to just sample a couple. This is the old Nancy Marco Gallery on 32nd. Remodeled her twice, one in 2020, one in 2025 since the hurricane. Next door is 3110 Pass-a-Grill Way. I actually deeded that historic, and it's very important to deed historic properties in Pass-a-Grill because our city keeps that historical standard, not just in the city, the county, and the country. 2503 Sunset Way, this is a 1933 Sears catalog home. Could have been sold, could have been bulldozed, knocked down, 3 stories. We saved her. Across the street, 2508 Sunset Way. It's been remodeled and updated twice. The neighbor of 702 Pass-a-Grill Way, 102 8th Avenue, La Tortuga, was purchased in 2022. We completely remodeled her. We've heard nothing but great comments about her over the last 4 years. And we kept her. She's 1925, another historical property. And then at the bottom, 100 Paso Grill Way, the 1941 U.S. Naval Barracks from World War II. We completely fixed them up inside. So that's who we are. That's what we're about. We love Paso Grill. We live in Paso Grill. Our businesses are in Paso Grill. So I just wanted to make that clear that we're not a builder. We're not trying to come in and do anything like that. So the next thing I'd like to show is the video, because I've heard some statements that are not true. There's not just one power pole in the alley, there's 4. Not one, 4 that impede the alley. So it's very important we see that. There's 2 green junction boxes in the ground. There's utilities popping up in the gravel. There is a neighbor who has a white vinyl fence right up to the alley. We have another neighbor whose building is all the way up to the alley. We have a barn garage that goes right to the alley. Is there sound? Yep, so I'll let you guys watch the video. Hello, this video is for the hardship variance for 702 Paso Grill Way. After having our meeting with the city manager and city staff, several staff members said they've never been to the property. So here is the video for you, along with the Board of Adjustment, the Historic Preservation Board, and the TRC. As we pull into the driveway, this driveway has been here for numerous decades. It was permitted in 2010 to go from cement to pavers, which was approved by the city and closed out. And the alley in question is off this north garage. And as you will see in the alley, there's numerous obstacles along with the width. So green junction box has been put in, light pole, cables running across, cables are very low running, white vinyl fence from the neighbor coming out, running down, cement coming out. Per code, the alley needs to be wide by 20 feet. In places, it's anywhere from 9 feet to 10.5 feet. As we come up here, you will see another green junction box, piping, cables, other cable, light pole with cables running, coming down really low, another vinyl pole, multiple cables running here, only 9 feet wide right here, wall coming right out to the alley. You have an old school wooden barn garage, no turn radius available for emergency vehicles to be able to turn and come down this alley. You've got multiple utilities, potable water, sewer, another water right here. You've got a main water line running right off the alley right here. And as you come back, another utility. These are the boxes. And there you have it. Hopefully this is a better viewpoint for you. Thank you. And then I zoomed in on pictures of the alley. Yes, I think, anyway, just go, yeah. So that's the gas popping up. You can see that's the alley. It's not even shelled. The city vacated the alley a couple of years ago. So no gravel, just weeds. You can see the vinyl.
I have to interrupt. The city vacated the alley? Or it just, you mean like they just quit maintaining it?
Utilities aren't using the alley anymore.
Okay,
So,
okay.
thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're on the same page
Sure.
what that means.
So the vinyl fence, cement going all the way in. That's in the alley. That is in the alley. You've got the green junction box at the bottom, multiple PVC pipes, power pole, multiple power lines, garage barn, right off the alley. Another view from a different point. Wall, that's a Vander Preston building right there, going right to the alley. Another pole. More utilities in the ground popping up. So what we're here today is about a driveway and an alley. The alley is too narrow per state law. Cars can't go to and from. And basically on that note, the fire marshal, you can't drive. How are you going to get ambulances, fire trucks? That could be a complete mess. They're going to go to 702 Passigrove Way driveway if there's ever an emergency. They're not going to be pulling into the alley. Cars aren't going to be going in and out between Shadrack's onto 8th Avenue. That'd be a complete mess. So what we're here today, what I was here on the December Historic Preservation Board meeting, and why we're here today is we just want the approval from the Board of Adjustment to let us use our driveway, which we've been doing since we purchased it since 2022. And this is the Historic Preservation Board. And over the last several meetings, this sounds more like a planning board, a zoning board. This is the Historic Preservation Board. So we should be talking about historic items. Not planning, not zoning. This is not the time or the place. Board of Adjustments tomorrow. So I'd like to stay on topic. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm right here.
I have some questions. So even if, let's say we agree the alley is impassable, okay, 'cause the shape it's in, okay, why would you ever rezone the property from ROR to CRD knowing that to be the case?
You're asking a question when I wasn't present.
Okay, so you don't have an answer for that.
I was never ROR when I owned it.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I'm-
it's commercial.
Okay, exactly. So my question is, so you want to keep it, you want to use it as if it was ROR, but get the advantage of getting 17 units as opposed to the 6 units you would have as ROR?
No, I'm not here for ROR. I'm here because I own a commercial property. Okay, and I want to be very clear. When I purchased the property in 2022, I had multiple meetings with the city. I asked every question I could come up with on what I'm allowed to do, what I'm not allowed to do. At no time 40.11 was brought up that if I ever built on the property, I'd have to use the alley. I bought a commercial property at a commercial price. I'm not talking about ROR. I wasn't around for it. It's a commercial property.
I understand that, and I appreciate what you're saying, okay? The point is, one of the things that has to do with the variances is the condition, is the issue created by a prior owner? And that's not you. I understand exactly what you're saying, all right? So it's just the matter of, yes, the alley appears impassable. Why would a prior owner change it from ROR? You want to use the ROR driveway, which is why when you talk about history, yes, that driveway has been there 100 years because it's an ROR zone. That was supposed to be like that. And so that's fine. So when it was rezoned, it had new rules. And so, you know, the question is, when we look at this variance, is it one of the salient points is, was this issue created from either the current owner or a prior owner? So that's why this is relevant. And I think everybody with any eyes can sit here and look and say that alley is in bad shape. And that's why I was questioning, because the part of the problem, you have done a lot of great historical things for Passive Grove. I'm not going to deny that. We seem to have hostility towards each other. I don't want it to be that way, okay? But you talk about keeping it historic. You're getting ready to sell it to a developer who's not going to make it historic.
I never said I'm keeping it historic. I said I'm at the historic board meeting. And this is not planning or zoning. What I said is I own a commercial property, and I should be allowed to do what I am allowed to do
Okay.
with my property.
But you want to take,
Yes, yes.
May I make a comment?
you have to identify yourself and all that stuff.
Excuse me?
We don't know who you are, sir.
Well, my name's on the screen, Greg M. My name is Greg Murtaugh. I'm a Paso Grille resident. I own 2508 Sunset Way, which is a property that's been there since the 1930s, which I redid twice. And I also own the other house that Mr. Tecklenburg referred to earlier, the Sears house that I could have easily mowed to the ground and built a house 3 times the value, but I chose not to. So I'm very, very in line with Paso Grille. I've lived there for 10 years and I'm a property owner. I'm also a part property owner at 702 Paso Grille Way. My question is what you just said, is that you made a comment that the new owner wasn't going to build this new building in a historical fashion. I just wanted you to clarify that.
Yeah, well, the plans we've seen is a urban modern building, okay? And one of the things we first got involved in before, when this all started, was is there any room, when we had the architectures on the screen like yourself, the architect who'd never been to Paso Grille, okay? From Michigan, and asked, is there any wiggle room to try to work something out? And the answer was no, this is what we want to build. And so, that hardened people's feelings because it wasn't a matter of cooperation or working with the historic board. It was, this is what we're going to build. And since this is the historical board, we are concerned with the architectural aesthetics of historic Paso Grille, just as you say you are, and Mr. Tecklenburg said he is.
Sir, as you should be. But here's my point. We've been on this call now, I've been on this call for an hour, and I haven't heard one question about building architecture, building design choices, color choices, consistency with the building and in the neighborhood, aesthetics of the building, or character of the building. There's not been one question in 1 hour. This meeting has been about zoning. And I thought, I showed up to this meeting because it was a historical board meeting, and I haven't heard anything yet about historical questions from you related to this project.
Okay, well, I'll be happy if you want to, I'll be happy to comment on that. So if one of the things we can do is recommend granting this variance with a condition that it have better architectural aesthetics, that it fit into the historical neighborhood, then maybe we would do that. But we've never had anybody from these developers that wants to talk to us about changing anything besides this urban, modern structure that will stick out like a sore thumb and not look like anything in Paso Grille and will ruin the aesthetic, historical nature of which you guys say you're so far about. So it's nice for you to say that we want to do that, but we're going to sell it to somebody that's going to mess the whole thing up.
So I'm going to stay on point, which is something that
I thought I was answering your question.
with this entire meeting. The reason why we're here, we're not, as Mr. Tecklenburg said, we're not the developers. I didn't design this building that's going to go on the property. I'm not the one who created the plans. That's DevMar, separate company.
I understand.
All we are is the owners, and we live in Paso Grille, wanting to exercise our God-given property rights to be able to sell the property. That's it. And so the only thing that we're looking for is just the ability to enter and exit the multi-million-dollar property we bought based on the same driveway that's been there for 50-plus years. Anybody who's walked down that alleyway with eyes can see that it's not suitable to go in and out of that property. Go talk to Scott, the owner of Shadrack's.
I understand. Look, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think you're preaching. I think we understand that issue. I think you're missing this point. If you're trying to suggest right now that you've done all this historical things, then that's irrelevant to what you're trying to do here, because you want to get a variance to then allow DevMar to build a modern structure. And that is why it's a historical issue, and that is why this is here. So one of the things we can do is we could grant the variance, and we could make a condition that there has to be some sort of change in the plans. I've asked about that in the past. They had no interest in doing that. So what we're going to get, You want to get your variance, you sell it to Devmar. A guy from Michigan who's never been to Pass the Grill is going to put a building in there that's going to ruin Pass the Grill. And you all can say how much you love history. It's going to ruin the aesthetics of the historic nature of Pass the Grill. And you want to say how much you're into history? That's fine. Well, why don't you talk to your client and see if maybe they would like to negotiate this a little bit so we could perhaps allow them this variance.
So you're not listening. They're not my clients.
Chairman, if we could bring the meeting back to order, I think we're going back and forth a bit between the chair and a representative from the applicant. I think there's other representatives from the applicant that are here. There's an attorney, Angela Covington, who I believe was going to speak. I want to make sure we give her some time to make her presentation on whether and how they meet the criteria for a variance.
And I would just like to make a point, sir, Mr. Murtaugh, I'm sorry, just to go back to what you brought up about the historic, and I think right now you guys are still the ownership, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's been solidified that Devmar is the owner. So on August 21st of this year, we had a meeting at the 51:03 mark, so at 51 minutes and 3 seconds. The chair asked, are you open to working with the historic board to create a more historic look? How fixed are you in your position? The people that were on the call with us, just like yourself and Mr. Tecklenburg, who's here, said ownership has said this is the direction they'd like to go. That was at 51 minutes and 47 seconds, which at that point, you all are still the ownership. And then they said, I'm just quoting it, mid-century modern look. So just to go back to, sir, yes, we're the Historic Preservation Board. Yes, we are looking for historic elements. It was clearly not open for conversation. And again, that was on August 21st. So if you wanted to go back, just to clarify, it's there for you.
I appreciate that. So here's all I was going to say is we're here about the driveway and the alley. We're not the builder. We didn't design the building. I totally understand what your board is supposed to be focused on, which is the historical design, architecture, etc. I would encourage you to keep doing what you're doing with regard to that and keep focused on that. But that's completely separate from who we are. We're the owners of the property, not the builders of the building.
Yes, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, okay? Although there's a bit of confusion when, the Devmar plans say they're the owners. There's a bit of confusion when your property's owned by a LLC, who we don't, until today, no one had knowledge you were one of the owners. So we don't even know who we're dealing with sometimes as far as that goes. And so, I don't know, maybe the LLC of 102 are the same people too. I don't know. So, and when they talk about variances and they talk about owners, who it's supposed to be a person we can talk to. If Devmar wanted to talk or negotiate some of this, that would make sense. But our hands are tied. I hope you understand that the staff already approved Devmar's plans, or they started to, right? So that's what they're going to build. Right. And so when you say that you're all historic minded, pardon me?
I said, I know what they proposed, and I know what the city approved.
Right, which is the modern look that we just talked about. So when you all say that you are historic minded, you know that that's what's going to happen. And so it maybe makes you feel okay that you can just go ahead and sell your property to anybody that can do whatever they want. It certainly causes us problems because if they weren't building a modern urban structure, we probably wouldn't be here. We might be agreeing to a variance request. One of the powers we have is to grant it with conditions. And so right now, we're trying to figure out, are there some conditions which will grant it, but would change this development? And that's what, in my opinion, what we're trying to do today. When you look at the circumstances, the 8 circumstances that have to exist, there are some real issues for you all, in my opinion. And so, a way to compromise is to figure out a way when we could grant you, but also change that development to some respect. And it's very difficult to do that when that person isn't the owner. You're just essentially kind of the middleman. But you want to sell your property with a package deal.
Chairman, let's,
Yep.
I think if you wanted to make a condition that the modern urban look be modified to meet general historic appearance and character of Paso Grill, that's something you could do
Okay.
as a condition, but I think we should move on because we're
Okay.
kind of getting stuck.
Yep.
Well, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, understand we're not against development, we're not against
Let's
trying
go,
to force
let's go
somebody to
to,
use.
let's wait, save that for all deliberations of the board. If we can continue to take, we still have to get through public comment.
Yep.
I think we're still on the applicant.
Mr. City Attorney?
One thing before we go forward, I feel like we're towing the line here with what we're able to do with someone's personal property rights. Our application is for a variance for driveway access on a parcel that's owned by this entity, not another entity. We're not asking the developer, the proposed intended hopeful developer isn't coming and asking for this. This is granting access to a property that exists as platted, that has historical access in this manner. The navigable alleyway is not actually navigable to our standards or their standards or anyone's standards. So I feel like that alleyway access should not even be considered. It's great for getting your bikes in and out, maybe walking your dog, but I don't think I would be comfortable driving my car in and out of the driveway or the garage there. The alleyway from 8th Avenue that was vacated several years ago was on another property that is not and has never been contiguous or as one parcel with 702. So 702 is a standalone. 102 is completely separate and not part of this discussion. The alleyway in the back and the driveway on the front of 702 is what we're supposed to talk about today. I don't think we're supposed to be talking about the proposed development from someone who doesn't own the property. We need to be really careful that we don't block access to someone's property rights, and I feel like that's what we're doing, and that's a problem for us as a city in the future.
And I 100% agree.
Let's
What you said.
keep moving with the
Okay.
testimony. Yep.
Mr. Tecklenburg, do you have other comments you want to make?
I would like to make one comment, and I did not want to do this, but it needs to be said because you didn't ask, you actually directed it to my partner, Mr. Murtaugh, and myself multiple times, that if we cared about Paso Grill and we cared about historic, why don't we care about the building? So I'm going to be honest to everybody here, everybody in the audience, everybody streaming at home and on a mobile device. I am not here with a variance to knock down a historic home. But you did, Bill. Yes.
There was no variance
Yeah.
to knock down a home.
No, no,
You
you
don't have a variance to do
no,
that?
You knocked down, let me finish. You knocked down a historic home,
Okay.
and then you asked for 2 variants to build your home.
Let's stay,
The reason I say that, sir, is because he built a modern home. And he's worried about a modern home in a historic district after he tore down a historic home for himself. It's okay for him to do it. We're not asking for a variance to build something. We're not knocking down a historic home on our property. We're asking for the driveway to be our primary driveway. And I have a problem with the head of the historic board who has done things in the past to benefit himself, but now is coming to me and laying judgment on me. And for this group, his mother-in-law lives 2 houses away from our property. There is definitely personal, there's something about bias. Sometimes when you're too close to the situation, you recuse yourself.
I'm sorry. With all due respect, I would be also considered too close because I work for a family business that's been there for 80 years. But it's not because I work there because I have a bias for anything other than I love our community and I love all the historic elements, and that's all there is to it.
Okay.
So, I know that you had kind of called me out publicly about, that I had bias, and it's not the case. And this isn't personal. We're the historic.
It's not personal.
This is the Historic Preservation Board.
Correct.
We're here to preserve.
Okay.
We're not here to demolish or destroy or to try to make anyone's life miserable. We just want to all live in the area that we love.
Thank you.
I think that goes for all of us, including yourselves. So
you. I'm
go tit for tat. but
I'm not
at
going
what
tit for
point-
tat. I talk truth. And since you brought that up, I appreciate it. At the August meeting, you said that this would be the largest building in Paso Grill.
I didn't say in Paso Grill. I actually went back, I made notes.
Okay,
So I can actually tell you
Yeah.
exactly what I said
So-
if you'd like.
you brought it up that it was going to be the biggest property. So what we want is a fair shake here. I appreciate Board Member Hawkinsmith's comments. That's why we're here. We're here for a driveway over an alley, and that's why we're here.
And I think it is of merit, if I may, Chair, that this is, subject variance would, if approved by the Board of Adjustment, whether the DevMar development went through or it did not, or there's another development, it would carry with the land that any future development could have that same opportunity. So if we're not looking at DevMar, we're just looking at Mr. Tecklenburg's approval for the variance.
Right.
And it's for the driveway.
I get that.
Not associated with that. So that is what the Board of Adjustment, they're going to be looking at as well.
I get that, but that's ignoring this whole DevMar thing that was the impetus of this whole thing. Because they're trying to sell as Mr. Tecklenburg has said, they're trying to close the deal. They want to sell this package to DevMar. So we know, we're not idiots, we know if we grant this variance, DevMar is going to build that because the staff has already said there's no problem with it, essentially, architecturally, all right? So right now, we have a little bit of power because they're asking for a variance to see if we could work something out where they could build something that did look historic and did not look modern. And that's what this whole thing has been about. Not trying to stop anybody, but when we look through the variances and what it is that they have to achieve or show, and if they have to show these by all these means, there are some problems with the variance. I agree. The alley is hardly passable. I didn't create the rules. I didn't rezone the property.
Let's move on to the testimony, if we could, please. Wait.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Brandon, anything else?
I'm so sorry. I've tried a few times to speak. I just want to say one thing based on those most recent comments. So I represent the applicant, and my name is Angela Covington. Nice to see you all. What I just heard is that we have a chairman who is upset with city staff approval of development plans and is hijacking a variance hearing because he wants to find a way to stop the city staff from their approval of development plans. And they'll follow. And that is wildly inappropriate. We're here on a variance. There are 8 criteria for variance. We've submitted paperwork on each point. I realize that the chairman's main concern is the zoning, and I assume that the Board of Adjustment, who actually has the power to deny or grant this request, will deal with that. It's been noted. We've all heard about it. We heard from the prior owner that there was no, first was asked to join that zoning, and many years later did, but still continued to use that driveway. So if the city had this ordinance that required you to use alley access, and he had this zoning for 10 years, and it's never enforced, then someone comes along and buys the property and continues using that driveway, and then decides that they want to sell the property. Yes, there is a requirement that the applicant cannot have created the problem or a prior owner. And I would argue they didn't. The prior owner had a home, their own home, their residence in the city where they live. They used their driveway to get to their home. They never used the alley. I would imagine when the zoning went through, the city could have stepped in and said, "Show us how you're going to use this alley," but nobody ever did that. And so now we're here trying at the last minute to get this variance because there's a code that no one had ever mentioned in all these years discussing this property. And we're just trying to clean up the mess that exists now because of that 9-foot alley. And my understanding is that this board is supposed to make some recommendations. And I think you already know what you want to recommend, and so I think this hearing needs to, just be a little bit more productive to the 8 criteria that we're here to talk about. I'm happy to address any particular item, but you want to use the driveway that's been used for a this is a variance hearing, and we cannot use this to try to air disagreements between the chairman and city staff on an issue that is not before this board.
Well, excuse me for answering. Let me just say this, but you agree that one of the things we can do is approve a granting of the variance with conditions.
This board can do that, or the Board of Adjustment?
Well, we can make a recommendation for that to the Board of Adjustment.
We do not agree with that at all. You can make a recommendation to the board tomorrow that's going to look at this topic in a even-handed way, hopefully, I have faith. But you do not have that power.
I know that. That's. I think we're talking about the same thing.
Let's go to public comment pretty soon if we can.
Okay.
We're getting just too much back and forth.
All right, I agree.
Would you like to hear public comment?
I don't know. Are you finished, Mr. Tecklenburg?
I would just like to reserve my right to speak after public comment.
Sure.
Thank you.
I had a question for Mr. Brooks. As if we were to grant a variance with conditions, I know in the past that we have put subject to review by the Historical Preservation Board, which is merely a review, suggestions, but it really has no legal authority or power to say you must do this or you must change that. It's voluntary. It's just a review by us to give suggestions. What would be the legality of saying, instead of subject to review, subject to approval by the historic, that any future development would be subject to approval by the Historic Preservation Board? Is there, I don't know that that's the right wording, but just getting to the point that we would like to have input with some teeth about the exterior design. Mid-century modern, is that a modern building or is that a more 50s style craftsman? What exactly does that mean? I think we might be all more comfortable with this if we had some input, lasting input on a design review of future development.
Okay, I'll think about that. I think right today you're here for this variance to the alley requirement. You could condition this one. I don't know that this would come back before you. The approvals for the variance go to the Board of Adjustment that makes the approval. So it's their final decision.
But we can
And then,
make,
if there's changes to the site plan or changes to the architecture, I believe those would come before you perhaps as informational items, as you have done in the past. If you wanted to make a condition.
for the variance for future, because if we grant this
Let me think about it
variance
then when we
without
get back to the
conditions, we have no
deliberations.
control over the look of the redevelopment in the future.
I think they're here today to get your recommendation about historic resources regarding to this variance. So if you have something that you want to put on a condition on this that has to do with historic design criteria, then you should make it today.
Member Young, are you just asking how much, whether it's DevMar's development that comes or somebody else subsequent, if you can make a recommendation as part of the recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, if you would have any input on the design and the aesthetics? Like a special requirement, is that what you're?
Would that be considered the same as a design review by the Historic Preservation Board? Which really is only a review and recommendations. It carries no weight other than that. So someone could say, well, thank you very much, but we're not going in that direction.
I think you could make that a condition or recommended condition of approval.
Okay.
But I think you need to be more specific. What are they making the recommendation on? That they come as an informational item? They come with, I mean, for an information, you can kind of.
Beyond, I guess what I'm getting at is
Yeah.
beyond a review or an informational session, that we actually, because somebody could say, no, we're going to put up a modern box. Thank you very much. So I would be reluctant to grant a variance based on the property as is, knowing it's more than likely going to be redeveloped, and we would have no say after that. Once we grant this variance, it's done. It goes with the life of the property. So we have whoever develops this property, whoever they may be, gets to choose what design. So I'm saying as a condition of the variance, if the Historical Preservation Board had more than just input, almost like a partnership with the developer to say, this is what we're recommending based on our design guidelines for the historical area. But beyond suggesting, how does our suggestion have any teeth so that it actually that's the style of building that gets built?
And I'd have to, ask the city attorney on that, but I don't know how much power you would have over the development guidelines, but we could try as staff, and in the spirit of that, initiate conversations when we do have developments or interested parties come in and say, you may want to reach out, you may want to attend one of our historic board meetings, or even meet with some of you, individually to just discuss it. We've done that previously with commission.
And we
They
have.
meet one-on-one. But I don't know about giving that actual merit.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Do we have any power within this board to say that as a condition? Because it's either grant the variance as it's been asked, and we have no say moving forward, whether it stays that big lot that's just open, or if it gets developed into a 17-room boutique hotel. Once that variance is granted, our powers are diminished, and we have no say. If we grant that variance with a condition that any future development, and it's, like I said, if somebody's got a preconceived notion that they want to put a mid-century modern structure up, once that variance is granted, that's what's going up, if that's what they want. So I would be reluctant to say, yes, let's give them the variance and hope that they come back to us for a design review.
Right.
But that's not guaranteed.
So you could have a condition that says you recommend approval with the condition that architectural renderings of the design be presented to the HPB for design review for architectural and historic consistency with the district.
And if I may take that one step further, city attorney, when would you like that implemented? At site plan, at building permit? I mean, I think
So you could
the board would want to know when that would be coming through.
So again, I go back to, okay, so they submit their site plans from the get-go. They say renderings, whatever, and it's a modern structure. And we say, well, we'd like to see, here's our style book. Here's what we'd like to see that blends into the aesthetic of 8th Avenue. And they say, no, we can build what we want.
But isn't that something that's already supposed to happen regardless? I mean, not specific to the site, but any redevelopment plans are supposed to come before a historic preservation board within the historic district, so.
Well,
If you're asking for like mandatory historic preservation, typically doesn't involve mandatory. It's a little bit different than other land development code criteria and environmental criteria. It's like you said, it's more collaborative. Unfortunately, even if you were to have a house or historic house, designated house come before you and they want to demolish it, the most you can do is put a stay on it. You can't say no. So it's similar when you're building too, the same kind of thing.
And I get that. We don't want to impede on property rights owners to build what they want to build.
Well, it's not property rights, but it's more design criteria. And I think you don't have design criteria now, but you are preparing some. So
But we also don't have to grant this variance.
To grant this variance, you could say, I recommend denial of the variance because it's not consistent with the historic character, Or you could say, I recommend approval with the condition that architectural renderings be presented to the Historic Preservation Board for design review prior to site plan approval or prior to building permit approval. So
At
we'll come back
the
to you.
very least, should we at least grant the applicant's request to retain the existing curb cut and be able to use that?
You recommend approval of the variance application for the use of the existing curb cut and the additional feet.
So if we're looking at it,
Even if it weren't with the additional feet, like right
Right.
now, I feel like there's an argument even as to the use and retention of that existing curb cut and driveway. It seems like that's
Just
being
whether you want to,
diminished.
whether you want to make any conditions or not is the question, I guess. Recommend approval of the variance application, and then if there's anything about historic resource that you would like to place as a condition on your recommendation, then that's up to you.
I don't know that we can put a condition on an applicant's request for access to their property, put a condition on a future possibility
Right.
from another entity. I mean, I'm trying to keep this in isolation here, is what it is and what they're asking for.
Then
You
you
know,
would just
it may tie to
recommend
something in the
approval.
future at some time with some person, but right now, this is a property owner with a property, and they're asking to be able to maintain and retain the use of their existing curb cut and also expand it by 3 feet.
Then your motion would be to approve the variance, recommend approval of the variance with no conditions, no additional conditions, because staff has 4.
City Attorney, I think what Member Hawkinsmith is saying, you can look at it this way. You can say you could go denial either way, whether it's denial of the whole package that they're asking for to retain the existing plus the expansion, so you can deny everything. Or you can say you could support the recommendation to leave it as is or with the expansion. And
And I think we need to be really clear as is. As is, are they legally allowed to use that driveway? Are those, parking spaces going to be, somebody parks in front of their driveway, is that going to be a problem for those people parking there? Or do they have the legal right and access to that existing curb cut and driveway?
They already do.
Okay.
It's non-conforming. They
Okay.
they can be there for 50 years and use that driveway.
But I think part of the argument that's been up here is that people don't want them to be able to use that driveway.
No, the idea is this. The nut of this whole issue is that, as Holly said, if we grant this variance, and let's just, for argument's sake, let's say there's, of these 8 things that exist, there's real issues in which we could support a denial of this variance, even though we know the alley's ridiculous, okay? But they chose to rezone it, so they put themselves in that hot water, okay? They created that problem. But let's say we say, okay, and that was so they could build more. Because this would be, as ROR, this would be a bed and breakfast with 6 units, which is initially when the CRD was created, that's what they could do. And then when they decided to rezone it, well, that comes with the alley problem. But it also gave them the ability to build 17 units instead of 6. So it certainly increased the value of the property. None of that was created by us. But the point is, if we can say, and then, so if a developer comes in, like we've seen so far with Devmar and what they've said they want to build, which totally is not an historic look. And the CRD, the intent of the CRD was to preserve the existing structures and the historic look. And so when this was rezoned into the CRD, suddenly we have an issue where someone wants to build something that totally disregards the historic nature of that area. And so I'm trying to put together some scenario, or we should be interested, as should Mr. Murtaugh, that was named Mr. Tecklenburg, of yes, we could grant this, but let's try to use the recommendation of allowing it to be granted that they can use the driveway to get them to change the design to make it look like the intent of the CRD is supposed to be. And what Holly is talking about is adding that very thing, as is Mr. Brooks. The question is,
I'm not advocating.
No, as you
answer questions.
As you mentioned, how it could be done is what I'm saying. How you would formulate it. So the question would be, though, if we make that recommendation, and the Board of Adjustment says, we're going to grant this with those conditions, can a new developer or DevMar say, well, okay, we'll listen to you talk about the architectural aspect, but we don't care. We're going to build this anyway. Okay? And then that's what we get. And so we've given up the idea of being able to at least make this fit the intent of the CRD. All right? And so I guess the question to you, Mr. Brooks, is can we, as a condition of granting this, are you saying all we can do is make an invitation to them to give us a design review where we can say, well, we don't like that, and they say, tough, we're just going to do it anyway? Or can we make it a condition that there has to be acceptance of the architectural, changes by the historic board?
Well, because we're an advisory board, we can't put any mandation on style and set.
But the Board of Adjustment, I suppose, could, because they're the ones we're just asking to make the recommendation to.
Right. Well, and we,
We need to take public comment.
Move on.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, but I have a hard stop at 10:30, which I said when I accepted this time slot, so I think everyone knows.
28.
Yeah, I think everybody knows my position, but if we're not in some sort of a motion status within the next 2 minutes, I have to go. So.
So do we want, are there public comments?
I have Melinda Pletcher.
Mr. Brooks, I have a comment real quick.
We have some public comment cards here of members from the public that want to talk, and then we can come back to you for a rebuttal if we could.
I just wanted to make one comment, and that is that these are two separate discrete things. There's the variance for the driveway, and there's the historical board recommendations on aesthetics, etc. Two separate things. So, let's keep them separate. Let's not try to link them for leverage. They're separate.
Unfortunately, I think they were linked in the request.
Exactly.
Applicant seeking to retain or expand existing curb cut that provides access to the property from Pascal Way following the redevelopment of the site with a 17-unit temporary lodging facility. So it was linked in the request. I feel like what we grant as a recommendation for variance approval is for the curb cut and not for the development, but because they're tied together in the request, it's making it a little bit blurry.
Is there something that we can do about that to alleviate that concern?
Such as what?
I'm asking, should the application be revised not to reference the development? That's just an explanation of the intention going forward, but, I mean, I see what you're saying, that it could be a little bit confusing. I'm just asking if there's something that we can rectify that.
Let's go to a public comment, and then we come back to that.
Melinda Pletcher, 2281 East Vina Del Mar, to a lot of my favorite people up here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, but I would acquiesce my time if it means that you all have to have a full board for a decision on this, to be honest with you. I think that's more important than anything. I think that what Member Hawkinsmith has said is so relevant to this discussion. When we look at roles and responsibilities, we look at purpose and intent, we look at historical, context to decisions that are coming before us. I mean, the Board of Adjustment variance process is absolutely to address things, to bring a common sense element into the situation. And I totally understand the leveraging position you're trying to take advantage, but you can actually preempt that. The reason we have everything come before, like the overlay, the reason it comes before the Historic Preservation Board is not so you guys can decide whether or not, it looks like a great vibe to you or it passes some Pass-A-Grille vernacular design. It's actually to know when to go back to the drawing board and tweak the underlying, the overlay design guidelines, and the things. We originally started out where everybody said we don't like the boxes with no roofs. Well, guess what? That's what our zoning said we wanted. If we don't want that, how do we fix that? If you say we love our retention of existing inventory of contributing structures. Well, guess what? They were non-conforming to setbacks, use, and density. I mean, there's so many reasons why we ended up to this thing. On the, the review of the demolition permits, you guys grant the variances, for historic preservation. That was like, those are critical elements. It wasn't for you guys to say, oh, please don't tear it down and we're going to penalize you 30 days if we do. It was to give you all an opportunity to have a conversation about all the benefits of historic preservation, the FEMA 50% rule, the 10-year tax abatement, that kind of thing. So what you can do in moving forward is actually whatever is desirable needs to be allowable, and what's not, so go back to the drawing board. If you want more criteria built into the CRD, you've had since 2008, 17. I mean, you start looking at the dates of how much time you could go in and tweak out the language in the CRDEA. And I always say, if you want some change, there's a process to do that, and it starts with you all. And it works with the planning board, and it moves forward to the commission, and you can fix this. Make what's desirable allowable, and what's allowable desirable. But you don't do it by trying to leverage something. That property's been there since 1925. That driveway to it has been there. There's so many grandfathered components in Pass the Grill to begin with, that acting like this isn't something that was just a given, that you would always be able to have that, because that's what Pass the Grill is. I mean, if we went back to the original Sanborn maps, the city should be talking to this property owner about being able to utilize Pass the Grill Way for the road. I mean, the original Sanborn maps had this property going all the way into riparian rights into the water. So, if you just have to when you have these quirky history of Euclidean zoning standards that were placed in Pass the Grill that have absolutely no context to what was historically platted, that's when you get into all these nuances. And this specific application, I think it should be approved for recommendation for the Board of Adjustment, because you guys are the only ones who know how quirky and weird all of this stuff is in Pass the Grill, and how you have to make common sense decisions. I mean, that alley, the city was irresponsible in the way they maintained those east-west alleys. I mean, who created the hardship? Those east-west alleys are
Well, the
horrific.
hardship was created when it was rezoned. That's not when the hardship was recreated. If it stayed ROR,
Okay,
there'd be no issue.
There were so many meetings. In fact, the 8th Avenue CRDA went actually onto a ballot initiative. It was in the March 2009 ballot.
That's fine, and this was
I'm so
rezoned in
sorry.
2017 or 18, so it was rezoned way after the CRD had been created.
And again, we can always argue our position. We're smart people. We always can do that. But I think that what we need to look at is just a common sense element that is desperately needed. And also, I think it's really important when you speak at the microphone here or up there, you have to be confident in the information that you're projecting out there to Joe Public, that it's accurate. And it was inaccurate that property was rezoned to the CRDEA to redevelop as the Holloway. Absolutely, 100%, that was inaccurate information.
I don't think anyone said that. It was just
Yes,
talking
you did.
about. No,
Yes, you did. I watched the
the whole
meetings.
property, no, I'm saying is.
Chairman, we go to the next
Okay, yeah,
public
that's
comment.
fine.
I
So,
don't have to
inaccurate,
debates with
please
each
speak.
individual public
If you know it,
comment.
say it. If you don't know it, don't say it, because it puts out a message that is just wrong. I've watched all the meetings. When I heard what happened, I was like, oh my gosh, that is not even true. Now, that's what the Joe Public's gonna think.
Okay, well then as a former commissioner, you know that the 3 minutes has been up for 3 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you for the courtesy.
Dave Feinberg.
Yes, ma'am. It was for you to go ahead and add any more comments you wanted to add.
Yeah, this is the public comment. If you don't have something, if you don't want to, but. that's
No,
up to you.
I think the hardship is that you're trying hard to create Pass the Grill the way you'd like to see it. And I think what I understand from what was just said is, do you have choices for people to make on design yet?
Not really.
So you're trying to take advantage of, just listen for a moment. I'm trying to say it as politely as possible. You're trying to add something, basically you have an alley request, yes or no, but you're trying to add conditions to it, which doesn't seem right. But you have the opportunity, which I think has been missed for a long time, is to give people choices and say, here's designs that we love. I don't know if somebody has an ugly design, you can just react to it so strongly, but there is time. Time goes by fast. That's why I was trying to give you a timeline. It goes by so fast that you could create a menu of what you think is beautiful.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but for 3 years we've been doing that. And it probably would have been put in place a year ago if the storm hadn't come through.
I understand.
So we've been working for that because
but
there were so many loopholes, and all the intent behind the CRD was never put into enacted. Everything's changed, and suddenly it became a situation where...
Chairman, let's let them get through his 3 minutes, please.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But maybe it would be nice to take, at this point today, you're not prepared to tell people that they can't have something. I'm not on anybody's side. I've been here. All I do is redevelop old. I have never built something new. I've always redeveloped something old. But basically, I think as of today, somebody is asking you something that you probably should say yes to, but then take from today as a date to remember that we can make Paso Grow better by giving input on what to choose and say these are items that the historic board likes on design. And if that hasn't been done yet, it would be a great time to add that to it if it could be.
As I said, we've been doing it. We've been putting it together for 3 years, Dave.
I would say that there's probably a way you could find a way to be more mainstream on it. But today, somebody's asking you something that you're almost obligated to answer, if that answers the question.
Any other?
Thank you.
Any other comments? Public comments? There's someone out there. I don't know if you put your name in or not.
You have to come up to the microphone and fill out a card. You can fill out the card after.
Just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Marty Nora, 555 Gulfway, St. Pete Beach. I have property on 8th Avenue, actually directly behind the proposed site we're talking about. And I appreciate what Brandon showed on the alley. Yeah, the alley, okay. My confusion is because the other properties I have on 8th Avenue, if we have to lose some parking spots, that just concerns me down the road because the store is there. So if this variance goes through or doesn't go through, I just want to make sure with the properties that's being proposed, if nothing gets built there, then whoa, I really don't want that alley or that driveway expanded. If things go through, and plus, I do like the fact that things are historic, because the properties that we have on 8th are historic, built in 1915, 1930. So I would appreciate to keep the historic ability on that property. And if nothing goes through, then I don't really want that driveway expanded. Otherwise, I know it's a tough decision, but thank you.
Thank you. Hold on. Anybody else? Go ahead, hon. Sorry, Brandon, Mr. Tech.
I'd just like to say a couple things. Thanks, everybody, for talking. Appreciate it. One thing I wanted to bring up was a word that was used up here, concessions being made on our property. Anything that is a concession to myself and probably to my partner, Greg, is negative towards the value of our property. So when you're saying let's do concessions, the word I think should have been recommendations, but I just wanted to be very clear. Everybody's talking about this future building that you don't think is going to be historical. There's already a precedent. We already have the Berkeley building that was built 2018, 2019. We have a modern building in Paso Grow. I think it looks really beautiful. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own opinion. But to come here and say you want to have this for a modern building, we already have a precedent. One was already built. There's also, as Marty said, we've got 1925, we've got different years. If you go down 8th Avenue, from J. Cole House's property where the Brass Monkey is, that looks completely different than Shadrack's. Shadrack's looks completely different than Evander Preston. So all of a sudden, we're trying to weigh in at the last minute when we don't have anything set up to try to put concessions on our property. When again, we're here for the driveway and the alley, and what was done at the Berkeley should be able to be done at another vacant lot. There's multiple vacant lots right now in the commercial district. So I just wanted to make that clear as we move forward. Thank you.
And if I could just comment on that, we agree that the Berkeley has great architecture. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. That's what the CRD is supposed to look. It's a modern building with a historical look. That's all. That's what we'd like. That's what the CRD is supposed to be about. And so that's why this is an issue. If these guys had come through with a building that looked like the Berkeley, we wouldn't even be here today. Or we'd be making a recommendation. A couple things, though, Brandon, I need you Mr. Berry. A couple things on passes, because Mr. Nora mentioned parking passes. Okay, just so I'm clear, this piece of property will be able to get 16 parking passes on the street, right?
Based on the unit count, yes.
Yes. Regardless of whether they have a parking garage or not.
Correct.
So they could have a parking garage for 16 spots, but they would still get 16 on the street.
Correct.
I just want to make sure, because you had mentioned, I think, when Mr. Tecklenburg mentioned concessions, that was one of the things about talking about the parking stuff. Of course, we're talking to the wrong people because they aren't the developers, right? So, now, another question I have, and the only thing of my concern is, as Mr. Tecklenburg said, there's lots of vacant properties in the CRD, which they are, okay? And we know the alleyway between 8th and 9th, the east-west alleyway, is just as bad and just as narrow at parts as the alleyway between 7th and 8th, right? You can't drive two-way traffic down there. You can't drive... And
it's not a passable width, I agree.
Than this particular piece of property. But those vacant pieces of property, are we at risk of, if we grant this motion that allows a CRD property to not have to use the alley, then what about all the vacant spots on the south side of 9th? All those people get to say, we want a curb cut now. This other building got one, gets to use one. I know we're on the alley, and then do we subvert the whole plan of the CRD, which is require people to use the alleys? And so, that's why this is such a bigger issue than this one piece of property. It has to do with the whole CRD. And so, what are we creating here if the idea was to use the alleys because it's a storefront area? And we'll get to this when we talk, I want to talk about Section 6 in a moment, about the treatment of the property is the same as other people get in the CRD. So, when we look at it from the big picture of the whole CRD, it's a whole other issue than just putting blinders and just saying, we've had this driveway for 100 years, we should be able to get it. Okay, well, can everybody else make that claim? All the properties on Paso Girl Way that are now, there were houses there, but now they're knocked down because they say we want a curb cut on Paso Girl Way. Why not? The 702 got it. They didn't have to use the alley. Why do we have to use the alley? The whole south side of 9th, which is what, I think 3 or 4 lots that are vacant there. Can they say, we want a curb cut, and then we've just totally subverted the whole CRD intent. And so that's why this is so important, because of how it comes out. In subsection 6, and I'm going to say this again, if I read this correctly, to approve a general variance under section 312, they have to satisfy all of the following conditions. And one of those, subsection 6, is granting the variance application conveys the same treatment to the applicant as to the owner of other lands, buildings, or structures in that same zoning district. In your response, staff response, it does not convey the same. So that's an abject failure on number 6. Because this particular piece of property is being treated specifically different than all the other properties in the CRD. And the only reason it's in the CRD was created by it's being rezoned to the CRD. If it was still in the ROR, we wouldn't have any of these problems. So they talk about ambulances and fire rescue. On the north side of 8th Avenue, those buildings, and they don't use the alley behind that for fire rescue. I mean, it's a narrow little alley. You know, they have to do things from the street front. That was the whole concept of the CRD, is make it to the street front. On Gulf Way, all those properties on Gulf Way that are in the CRD basically are built to the street front, and they don't, and they're different structures than this one particular piece of property. And so, you know, it seems to me if these are what the rules are, that they have to meet all these conditions that under subsection 6 itself, even throwing out whether this was based on a prior owner's creation of this issue by having it rezoned. Under subsections, they are being treated differently than everybody else. So why are we doing that? That's why I think we have the ability to say, using common sense, but you know what, that alley is so bad. We can swallow the fact that they've now been able to get 17 units instead of 6, all right, which now creates this big building. We can swallow the fact that the alley is a problem. But what have we created for the rest of the CRD? And so do we just sit idly by and watch them build a modern glass and steel building there that's so much against the intent of the CRD? Because we've allowed them to do that, because we've said we'll give you this variance even though you don't qualify under subsection 6. So this is about trying to save a historic district. It's not about this particular piece of property. It's about where this is all going to go as a result. And wouldn't it be great?
Do you have any more questions for staff, or can we move right into board deliberations, a motion, and?
I've got a million questions, but that's fine. I mean, I guess the question for staff would be, staff agrees that subsection 6, they have failed in that? The applicant has failed to show that they aren't being treated differently?
I mean, I think in terms of a redevelopment right and access from the street, that is the case. I do think that based on what I wrote elsewhere in the report, it needs to be considered in the context of the special conditions and circumstances that are specific to this lot. To answer your initial question, variances do stand alone. No variance should be used as the basis for approval of another variance. The properties, and this is talked about in the staff report, on between 8th and 9th, they have circulation. You're correct, the east-west alleyway is not passable, but there is circulation that does not provide for on this property. Granted, that is potentially partially due to the alleyway vacation, but that occurred prior to the CRDEA. We comment on that as well.
That was the same owner that had it, that vacated it, and also asked to rezone it.
Correct. One property was an LLC, they own the other one in name, I believe.
Circulation of the alley was prohibited by the same person that asked to ultimately rezone it into the CRD.
It was not a thoroughfare public alley in the way that there is a thoroughfare public alley between 8th and 9th Avenue. The conditions are different on between 8th and 9th than they are on this property, even historically looking at the plat.
Member Young, did you also have questions?
Yes, I actually would like to make a motion so we could have some discussions about certain points of the motion and modify them, disregard them, whatever. So we're more focused on, are we going to grant this or not, or make the recommendation? And at the very end, and my recommendation for the motion is going to have 4 conditions. Okay. And one of those is subject to design review by the Historic Preservation Board. And Mr. Rolfs, you had some wording that you used earlier that I did not get to write it all down. So when I get to that point, if I could ask you to repeat what you said so that it could be part of the motion, so I get that wording right? Would that be okay? Okay, so
That was approval with conditions that architectural renderings and design be presented to the HPB for historic design review of
yes,
prior to site plan approval.
yes, that's what it was. So I'm going to make a motion to recommend to the Board of Adjustment an undue hardship variance for the property at 702 Paso Grow Way, that number one, with conditions, number one, we grant a 3-foot curb cut at the driveway with the ability to shift the curb cut or driveway north to accommodate a 3-foot wide landscape buffer. Number two, the property forfeits all street parking passes. Number three, provide a 3-foot landscape buffer on the southern side containing appropriate shrubs, hedge, and trees, or fence or wall compatible with the architecture of the development, and it shall be installed along the entire southern side of the retained driveway. The buffer, fence, or wall shall be installed at least 5 feet in height, except where in conflict with the visibility standards of the Land Development Code, Section 6.21, or where actual and documented site visibility issues are present. And then the fourth one is, and that's where you come in, Mr. Rolfs, with that blurb about the design review.
Architectural renderings and designs be presented to the Historic Preservation Board for historical design review prior to site plan approval.
And that is the motion in its entirety.
Okay, before we get to a second on that, I appreciate what you're saying. So we're basically talking about, just Holly, so I'm clear, on page 3 of the 9-page staff report. So, or no, excuse me, I think I'm proving.
Okay.
I think it's page 8. Page 8 in the middle there where it says staff, no, where is it?
So as part of the technical review committee
Yeah, was
comments.
Is that what it was?
It sounds very familiar, and then on page 8 of 9, there is a summary of conditions that staff is presenting to the Board of Adjustment should they support the variance.
Right. So basically, it's certainly two. Well, it's not. I think Holly, that maybe as we look at this or what you're trying to achieve, under the summary of what the staff is suggesting.
Mm-hmm. Because if I may, as part of the technical review committee, that's where we came in with the applicant as we sat down and said, would you be willing to do that?
Right.
And we're just giving you the background information on that. And subsequent to holding that TRC and conversations we've had, and then doing the staff findings report based on this Board of Adjustment case, staff has kind of revised it a little bit, tweaked it, but still kept some of the same spirit, but maybe not as intense as the TRC initial conversation. So if maybe those conditions, including the design review, would that be amenable to you?
That's what
more in alignment?
That's what I want to look at. It may be easier, instead of reciting it, if we can refer to this.
Correct.
Okay. And so I want to make sure that these, in the 4 issues, the 4 points on the summary, I just want to look at those a little closer.
Or you may want to tweak them back, but that has what we formulated as staff recommendations to the Board of Adjustment for conditions. And again, should the Board of Adjustment support it, they can alter it, add additional, remove some, but just as staff, that's what we recommended.
Okay, so let me ask a question on those. And Brandon, Barry, this might be for you. On number 4, I'm not quite understanding that. until such time as the subject driveway access to Pass Girl Way is eliminated. You mean if the variance was denied?
No, so that is to say that should in the future the property owner decide, or the developer, or the eventual owner decide that they want to provide access from the alleyway, they would be able to receive all of their hang tags that are eligible at that time. If they were to eliminate the driveway in the future, they would be able to have all of the hang tags that they're allowed based on the Code of Ordinances.
Okay, so that, okay, so where's the nexus between what you're saying and them saying they have to forfeit the on-street parking?
Staff's recommendation was to forfeit 2 of the hang tags. The reason for that is because the removal of this driveway would allow for the placement of 2 additional on-street parking spaces. So that's the...
There's something in here earlier, or Holly mentioned it about...
Between the TRC and where we asked for them to forfeit all,
Yes.
the conversation.
Yes.
That's on page 3.
Correct. So as part of the TRC, the applicant was unwilling to do that as part of, that's kind of a by right now. They do not need to necessarily provide any parking on site.
Yes.
So it was kind of just worked out that way, that we're still asking for a request of forfeiture of some.
Yes.
Again, that's a recommendation rather than all.
Okay. So, and I'm not sure what Holly said, but I do know we got the part that Mr. Attorney Brooks has referred to, okay? We've got the landscaping part, which looks like that's going to be in number 3 on page 9, right?
Correct.
We didn't really talk about the development shall be installed with a right turn only sign that the staff recommended, but I would assume that might be something that would make sense.
What was the question? Or what was?
One of the things staff recommended was if there's a development, the variance is passed, that there should be a right turn only sign at the exit property of Pass Grill. So you'd have to turn south on Pass Grill Way.
So that could be, then I will amend my motion.
Well, let me finish
Okay.
up, and then you can do that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just saying, let's talk, if that's something we're talking about, which is on page 8 of 9, subsection 2. And then, I don't know, Holly, if you were intending to follow staff recommendation that's on page 3 that talks about a developer would have to forfeit the on-street parking passes for lodging facilities. And that would be assuming they're building a parking garage on site, right? Brandon, Barry?
Well, it's the retention of the driveway access specifically that we read.
So that's saying is, because right now they get 16 parking passes if they build no parking area, which, if you read all the stuff, clogs up the area around there. So if they're going to build a site with parking for 16, they should have to forfeit the on-site ones. Because, and I'm just going to say this, just because if someone goes to stay at a hotel and decides, I don't want to park in the parking garage, I've got a permit, I'm going to park on the street. You know, nothing can stop them from doing that. But if you prevent them from giving the people on-site parking, they can just park underneath the house and or underneath the building.
Okay, I think I addressed that in condition number 2. The property is to forfeit all on-street parking passes.
So you'd like to put all instead of staff
Yes.
recommendation of 2. That's part of your motion. I'm just making sure.
Well, I'm going to revise the conditions and add number 5 about the right-hand turn signal. So, Bill, you were saying the property passes.
Well, we can make that discussion. I guess what I'm saying is,
I'm just saying they forfeit all of them.
Okay.
If they
If
keep the
that's your motion, that's
driveway
fine.
and get the curb cut like they want, they forfeit, the property forfeits
You don't build.
all
This is if they're-
on-street
I
parking
understand.
passes now and in the future.
We're in board deliberations at this point.
So I would like to amend my motion, and I would like to add one more condition. Condition number 5 would be, the development shall be installed with a right turn only sign at the egress from the property to Pasagrille Way.
Member Young, if I may, just for, because the staff is doing this, and actually for the board as well, are we finding support for the staff recommended conditions with the alteration that all parking spot, or all hang tags be eliminated? I'm just trying to see the continuity
Yes.
between the two. So if you support more of the staff recommended conditions with the modification to number 4, that all hang tags would be forfeited.
I think what she's trying to do is pick up on page 3, the TRC first one, which is about if this is approved, where number 4 is if they don't utilize what's approved and they eliminate the driveway access to Pasagrille, then there's a different scenario, and then there would be 2 fewer parking tags that were issued. So there's 2 possible scenarios. 4 is kind of a contingency, is
Okay.
to address if they actually don't use the Pasagrille. Or
But also just to make, if they decide not to use it, then they should get all 16 back. You know what I'm
Correct.
saying?
If in the future the driveway is eliminated, they would be eligible for all the parking passes
Yeah,
based
right. We're
on,
saying, take them all away now, if they're gonna use the driveway. If they're not gonna use the driveway, they can get them all, right? I mean, that's what, I'm not, the 2 things.
Brandon was saying 2 fewer, but
Yeah.
you're saying give them all back instead.
Okay.
Right, because
Okay.
we're taking them all away, so if they don't use the driveway, they should be allowed to go back to normal, right? And so, ma'am, Courtney, I don't know if that was your first name or last name, they don't actually have your name up here.
Angela Covington.
Angela, oh, sorry, I'm way off on that. Ms. Covington, as the chair, I think you may have something to add that will be good or bad, but let's go ahead and hear it. So I'm going to say, go ahead and let us know what you have to say.
Sure. So what I'm hearing is that we're here to ask permission because of the situation we find ourselves in to continue using this driveway. And we're in front of a historic preservation board, and we're talking about right-hand turn only from the driveway, which I don't know what that has to do with anything historic in Pasagrille at all. And shrubbery, I guess I could imagine parking passes. It seems like we are linking a very simple request to use the driveway to a lot of issues that have nothing to do with the historical board. And the impact of the value of the property by making it right turn only, by taking all street parking, is an undue burden on the owner and interferes with their rights to use and develop their property in accordance with the law of the city. And we shouldn't be linking our request to use the driveway to what this developer may or may not do. They don't own the property, we are here for a variance for us to be able to use the driveway, and we're mixing a lot of stuff into that and creating conditions that have nothing to do with the request or the historic preservation of that road.
These are staff conditions, proposed staff conditions that came from the variance application and the Board of Adjustment review. I think it's proper if you want to consider those as part of your recommendation for approval, that you're recommending approval if they follow the staff recommended conditions for the variance.
Right. So, is the board clear on what Holly's motion, is everyone clear pretty much on what Holly's motion is?
Should I just briefly reread it so you know all 5 points?
I don't think it's,
Now, I think I think what we probably have to do, because this is gonna be prepared in written form for tomorrow as a recommendation, is that correct?
Staff will prepare it, right?
Yes.
So I assume we'd have an opportunity, arguably, just to make sure it's what we think it is, that we've all said this, as opposed to having to reread it,
Well,
word for word.
if you want an opportunity, you got to do it now.
Why
Because
not?
we're not reconvening before tomorrow.
No, I just meant, okay. Well, then, I guess the staff will have to prepare it now, so we can look at it.
So staff can run through. Brandon's really good at this. He'll be able to put these points out. I've seen him do it countless times.
Okay.
If I can just, so I want to take the conditions out of the staff report because they are very similar to what the board's proposed with one what Member Young has proposed with one exception before you second or take action. The 4 recommended conditions made by staff in the staff report that was presented to you today will be presented. Those fulfill items 1, 2, and 3, and 5 of the items that we just discussed. The one exception was to recommended condition number 4 in the staff report. Staff had recommended forfeiture of 2 on-street tags. And we based that based on the retention of this driveway, preventing the city from installing 2 on-street spaces. The recommendation from Member Young is that all of the hang tags be forfeited while the driveway is in place. In addition to that, so otherwise the conditions in the staff report stay the same. You had recommended item 1, which was to shift the curb cut north to accommodate a 3-foot wide landscaping buffer. Item 3 was also requiring a 3-foot wide landscaping buffer. As it's presented in the staff report, we combine them into one item. So it's both the shift and the actual planting in one condition in the staff report. In addition, there was a 5th condition pertaining to a requirement for architecture and design renderings that would be presented prior to site plan approval. Does that capture your request?
Well, the language that Attorney Brooks used was a little bit different than what you just said, but yeah, right. No, about the historic review kind of thing, right.
Just a little more detailed.
Yes. So may I make a suggestion, since we've been here obviously for 2 hours, is we just take a short break so Brandon can prepare that, and then we can come back and actually vote on that motion. Does that make sense?
Yes, staff can write that up, and I do have a sample memo format that we can probably drop that in, make copies, distribute for your approval. Or for consideration, sorry, not for approval.
Right.
So if I understand it, Brandon's going to take my motion, write it up, we're going to look at it, we need to get a second on it.
Yes.
We still need
Unless
to
there's a
discuss it, if anybody on the board needs to discuss it, and then we'll vote on it.
Yes,
Okay.
and assuming if there's something in the language that he put that we want to discuss, we
Tweak.
can before.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Does that make sense? So we'll take, Brandon, I know you're quick, man. How much time? 10 minutes, all right?
10 minutes is fine.
10 minutes? Okay, we'll take a break for 10 minutes? but I think we're all reading this, so be a moment.
Maybe just say propose. Because you have to maintain and expand here. Be good.
I don't know if everybody's had an opportunity to mostly read this, but I would like us to relook at number 1. And the wording of that may not be quite, what we're talking about, and I think we need to have a discussion about that up here, but one of the things that concerns me is tomorrow at the Board of Adjustment meeting, there's going to be a written recommendation, right? Like we've talked about right here, is my understanding. And I don't know, such as when staff does a recommendation, there's usually an aspect before the recommendation that sets out why you've come to the conclusion that you've come to, okay? And I can't speak for I think the board has to talk about this, but what bothers me in number 1 is it says the subject request is found to meet the criteria for issuance of an unnecessary undue. See, in my opinion, it has not. However, because we can grant with conditions, that's an option we have. But I don't want to tell the Board of Adjustment we find that, unless the board disagrees with me, that they have met the criteria for issuance, because I think they have not provided substantial and competent evidence to on number 2 or number 6. And so if we don't put something, if we just say they've met it, then I can see the Board of Adjustment say, oh, they've met it, we don't care about the rest of this stuff. And that's not what we've been talking about today. And I think it's well within our rights to say, there is problems and they haven't met all the criteria. However, for these following reasons, we recommend granting with conditions. Now, does the board, do you understand what I'm saying, and do you agree with that? Or
Yes.
I'd have to agree with that, yes.
And Chair, if I may, just because
Yes.
it's noted that staff, and I just wanted to make sure we get this appropriately, that you are looking to recommend as proposed with the 3-foot expansion at like the total kit and caboodle? Or are we just saying the existing? I just want to make sure we're getting Member Young's
Yeah.
recommendation.
Well, I don't know what she says. I don't think the 3 feet is that big of a deal if we're gonna.
And I want to get that on the record.
Well, I don't know. Is that what,
That's-
in your motion, do you want is it okay to increase the driveway from 17 to 20 feet?
Well, and I think we should be specific about, we are recommending that it be granted from 17 feet to 20, not an arbitrary number that's decided later.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's important.
Okay.
but do we have that in there right now? It's not.
No, and that is on my notes. And again, this is a working document.
Yeah.
that
Okay. Okay.
We're moving and grooving on this end.
And do we also need to add, and this was in my motion, that in addition to increasing the driveway from 17 to 20 feet, that there is the ability to shift the curb cut or driveway north, and we could specify how many feet, not just an arbitrary, north to accommodate the 3-foot wide landscape buffer. Now, I don't know, I cannot remember from my site visit how much space it would be available now, how much it would need to shift over, but I think if we had the ability to shift the curb cut or driveway over 4 feet, no more than a maximum of 4 feet, that would allow for at least 3 feet 3 feet wide for a landscape border plus a foot. But I don't know what is there now, how far
Right. No, it goes up to
the edge of the curb cut comes to that fence line
And
where the landscape border would be.
And I think if I may, as part of, if we're suggesting these recommendations as conditions for the Board of Adjustment, I can say in the past, it really may not be that specific because things may come up with the site plan, but it's kind of like a guideline that says to accommodate this, unless it's really, really something specific, the board has allowed staff to have that leniency to make sure whatever goal that they're looking to do is achieved. Because again, once we get out in the field or we get the site, if you're saying specific measurements to make this happen may not always occur that way. So it's probably more general where we allow staff to make sure the spirit of what you're looking to do is met.
And
so
and that
that's
is
where,
from saying, okay, well, it's the driveway is over here to the side now, and the site plans call for it to be in the middle but that has nothing to do with the landscape barrier. I just want to make sure that it's only to accommodate the landscape barrier.
Well,
Or the buffer.
But also on the same thing, we're now conflating the DevMar development, which may not be what ultimately it is, right? So when we talk about those specifics of adding 3 feet to the curb cut, that was because that's what DevMar wanted. And I don't believe the applicant asked for the 3 feet, I don't think. I think that was just the staff thinking that it goes with the DevMar development. And what I'm wondering is whether or not we just are granting the use of the driveway, and then depending on the plans, they would have to come back to either get a variance or do whatever to increase it or move it or whatever, because we don't know, if we're trying not to combine these things, we really don't know what the development is supposed to be.
I would agree with that. I would say that there's the request to maintain an existing driveway connection versus maintain and expand.
Right, and they could come in and expand at a later date, depending on what's going on. And I think Holly's position that, I think we all agree we'd like to see a landscape buffer, again, in the general spirit of the thing, but again, we don't know really where their driveway is gonna be or how much they want expanded or if they want to expand it at all. So, does that make sense?
Well, so we know that they want to expand it to
Well, but that's,
20.
But that's for DevMar's development. We're removing, we've been
We
cautious.
have to look at the application that's in front of us. I thought the application was to maintain and expand by 3 feet.
So before I say any more, the applicant is asking to speak after we discuss and have a motion here. Is the board amenable to that?
Okay.
But at the same time, we want to make sure that there's a landscape barrier and that it can be accommodated.
You have that on number 3.
Yeah.
Number 3, they have to put that in.
Yes.
Well, I don't know, maybe we can just resolve that quick with Mr. Tecklenburg. Do you want to have the 3 foot? Are you asking that to be part of that, or is that just dependent on what?
I don't know if we can pull it up. I sent Brandon and Kristen our landscape currently at the property. So on the north side of the fence, we've got bushes, plants, trees, different kind of palm trees going from the northeast all the way down to the northwest corner. We also have tons of birds of paradise on the west side. So as far as what I'm understanding from the TRC hearing and what I'm picking up right now is there is a request for us to put bushes in on the south side currently where the driveway is.
Yes.
So you would have to tear up that driveway, put 3 feet wide, and here's the kicker, go about what, 140 feet long? That's, so the thing is, we already have a 6-foot high fence. There's a nice barricade.
I've seen, I know you're talking.
In my 4 years, I've never heard from either owner around my property about privacy or, seeing through. So,
Right, but I think that the issue here is if you've got 17 units and you've got 16 cars pulling out of that driveway on a daily basis, that there's a residence to the south, and the staff is suggesting it'd be nice if there's a little bit of a landscaping buffer so these cars just aren't right next to a parking lot. And so
I think there's landscape, just to go back, I think there's enough landscape already there. Of course, if somebody buys the property and they do that, at that time, then they can discuss with the city about potential future landscape. But right now, there's already a driveway there that goes right up to the.
But they're not asking you to do that.
Mhm.
They're asking that if and when it gets developed, is that correct? That if and when it gets developed, that those developers would have to abide by that.
If they're using the driveway.
Yes, right. So it's no additional. It doesn't mess up or add additional cost to you. It's just that when you are putting this together and someone wants to buy it, that is, if the Board of Adjustment approves it, then they know there has to be a little bit of a landscape along there, which it obviously makes sense since it's a residence to the south of you and you've got a lot of cars coming in.
So when I remodeled, I got to give an example. So we're at 3112 Paschal Way, when I remodeled it, had to go through that process. I had to put 20% of vegetation. So there was grass and there was trees and there was other things I put up. But it was never like, you have to have it right here. You have to have it right here. So to me, that's a concession that if I go to sell my property and I say, hey, you got it. Oh, by the way, this over here, you have to do it right. Oh, it has to be right here. And if you don't do it right here, then you can't go ahead. So to me, that's I think right now, if you guys were at the property and we have photos that I took, there's plenty of landscape right now. There's a nice buffer between 102 8th Avenue and,
This is all about the south side where the driveway is, where there isn't a buffer right now.
Well, there's a 6-foot high fence.
Well,
No, I understand that. Okay, look, this is.
And no one's complained about it.
This is a staff recommendation that if you are reading the room here, maybe going towards you getting a granting of this variance and a recommendation that allows you to do that. And so it's no skin off your noses. And if you have a developer that says, I'm not gonna buy that because I don't wanna put in landscaping, then who are you selling it to? I mean, that's just a nice neighborly thing to do, and it makes sense that the staff would recommend it, and it certainly makes sense that if we get to recommend to the Board of Adjustment that we would wanna do that. So, I mean, I'm not trying to argue with you, I'm just saying that's a reasonable position from us and the Board of Adjustment and the city staff.
Well, and a fence or wall that's at least 5 foot in height is that buffer also. It doesn't necessarily mean plants.
It already exists.
Well, it does, where they
So it
have.
already
Well, it says a 3 foot wide
Disabled
landscaping
fence.
buffer containing appropriate shrubs, hedge, and trees, or fence or wall. So,
have an 8-foot
That's
fence
what-
fence
already.
or wall is.
That's what's in the new printout that we just got?
Yeah.
It's in the new printout we just got.
Yeah, the one we just got, but I apologize, I didn't see, when I was talking
And it-
about landscaping, I didn't know it said or fence. But it
So it
has
says
to be
or.
compatible with the architecture of the
Sure.
development.
So, okay, so we're good on that one. All right. I have two questions, just so I can understand about the street parking passes. All right. I'm a real estate agent. Board member Hawkins Smith's a real estate agent. Board member Hurley's a real estate agent. Board member Young's a real estate agent. I'm trying to understand taking away parking passes. I can't see, Board member Young, that you would ever represent a seller and tell them to lose 17 parking passes. I know, if you are representing a seller and you're saying, hey, give up 17 parking passes, your evaluation of your property drops. So we were talking about 2, and now we just gone to 17? I mean, that's,
Okay, well,
so, but here, you guys are recommending, and it's gonna go to the city.
Absolutely,
I've
right.
got 4 real estate agents here,
Yeah.
and I don't see any agent here recommending to their seller to give up 17 parking
I
passes.
understand that, but you gotta understand, we're talking about citizens in a neighborhood. We're supposed to be responsible for those folks,
Correct.
just not for real estate agents, okay? It's not all about just facilitating for you to make money. It's to facilitate that we can put something in there that the citizens can live with, okay? And I think the point being is, if you read all these reports by the city and staff, one of the things that they picked up that you didn't even talk about parking was how one of the reasons that this should probably be granted is because of the excess on-street parking that you having 17 units, okay, puts on the burden of that area. And so if you're gonna build a structure that has a parking area for 16, why should you get an additional 16? And I think that certainly makes sense. If your developers who ever sell it decide they're not going to put a parking area, then they get the 16 units back, okay? So, that's just,
Again-
I don't know how bad parking is down there. And the city is pretty much, and anybody that goes there has realized that one of the important reasons why this variance should be granted or possibly be granted is because of the issues are the excess parkings that exist. And this is a way to deal with that. And so, you're right, the Board of Adjustment may say we don't need that, but, this is a bigger issue of parking.
Okay. Sure.
Imagine if there's other places in the CRD decided to build similar structures.
Okay.
And everybody got double the parking,
But, so we're all on the same page. One of the reasons we bought the property and we paid as much as we did is because it came with 17 parking passes. So the last thing, the street, the driving, going right, heading south.
Yeah.
Out onto Paso Grille Way. Where are all those cars gonna go? Now we have a cluster. They're gonna, start doing a 3-point turn on 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue. They're gonna go all the way down to 1st. The majority of people pulling out are gonna go left.
Of course they are.
And they're gonna leave. So having a right turn to go south into Paso Grille, that doesn't make sense, because now they're gonna have to loop back around, and now there's more traffic. They're gonna go up residential roads, and then they're gonna go Gulf Way.
No,
I don't think that is a good solution whatsoever.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, okay? Just, I understand exactly what you're saying, okay? And you know that Paschal Way gets very crowded during certain times of the year and the day, right? And so I imagine the reason the staff recommended this, your discussion is more to the staff, I suppose, is because when you're leaving that area, if you've got to cross the traffic, you're going to be stopping the flow of traffic, which, as you know, at certain times of the day, that can cause a lot of backups. And so if you turn right, at least the traffic is kept moving. And I'm sure that's probably the reason they think of that. You know, to me, I don't know, maybe that's a better study for traffic to make the determination of whether or not that's a legitimate concern or not.
Well,
But I think you have to recognize
I'm just trying to understand how it stops traffic. You look to the left, you look to the right. If it's, and you pull out.
Because when you turn left, okay,
Mhm.
there's traffic going to the north, they've got to stop for you.
You're also going over 2 yellow lines.
Correct. Correct. And that is the reason why staff put that in there. There's a double yellow line.
great.
Oh, there is? Okay.
Yeah, that- well, that's great.
Sorry, what was that?
There's 2 yellow lines. I mean,
Okay,
It's a double yellow line.
right.
You're not supposed to go left with the lines.
Okay, let me add that in.
That was a staff recommendation, that wasn't ours.
Oh, I know that. I was just trying to, and at the TRC hearing, we didn't talk about going right. So this is new for me.
Right.
And we didn't talk about 2 parking passes at the TRC. At the TRC, we talked about all 17. So the 2 and the turning right is new for me, so I'm just playing catch up.
No problem.
Greg, Angela, anything? Can they hear me?
I don't know.
I mean, I'll just say that I agree with you, Brandon, that if you have people turning right, and I did hear the double line argument, so I'm open to discussing that. But if you have people turn right, they're just gonna turn right down 7th Avenue. And so, I don't know how many homeowners there are on 7th Avenue, but I bet you if we did a survey of the 10 homeowners on 7th Avenue and said, hey, would you like, 30 more cars turning right on 7th Avenue every day? I think they would probably say no. So, okay.
Brandon, Barry?
And I also would just like to add that as I'm listening to deliberations on this, you have the current owners who want to use the driveway, not be forced through an alley. And then you have a developer that may want to expand that driveway. And it seems to me that any conditions you want to include with the recommendation should be upon development, these conditions were arise. I don't believe that, the driveway's been there, neighbors don't have a problem with the driveway. They don't have a problem with any issue that I'm aware of. And so why can't we tie the conditions to what's done in the future, if something's done in the future? But for now, we just need to use the driveway that's there, and that should be simple, I'm sure. That's all. I just wanted to.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think these conditions, if the board goes with them, affects what you all can do right now. It's only dependent on if it gets developed. If it stays the way
Yeah.
it is.
The sentence says following redevelopment of the property.
Right. Mr. Barry?
That's like super important, right? So this is not a quid pro quo set of conditions. So I like what I just heard, that there's actually now a unlinking, if you will, of what we're trying to do here with what the future has to hold.
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm sure. So I'm concerned of why there's so much argument about when we're talking about, even though this board could say, recommend denial because of not having met a couple of the requirements, we're still talking about, or the motion is about granting it and getting what you want, but with some conditions for future development. Not for you, not might affect the sale of how you sell it, I don't know, but that's just where we're at right now. So,
Great, as long as that's super clear at tomorrow's meeting, that's terrific.
all right, Mr. Barry, you had something you wanted to say?
No, I think you just summarized it. I just wanted to be clear that, as you mentioned earlier in the meeting, this is a requirement that triggers upon redevelopment of the site. Staff would treat that as issuance of a site plan for a new development is when we would need to see those conditions. At certificate of occupancy for the building is when we would make sure that they're on site. So if we need to make that clear, it seems like there is board agreement to that, and everybody's on the same page at this point.
Yeah,
I just want to make that clear.
Subheading or number 1 there, I think we need to change the beginning of that. And
I think we wanted to add in the first paragraph, third sentence down, where it says, request to maintain and expand an existing driveway connection from 17 feet to 20 feet. Right here. To just add that in so it's specific.
yeah, in the body of it.
And then we were talking about, do we want to also?
Hold on,
Wait a
hold on.
second, wait a second. I don't see that on the printout we just got.
She's adding, she's talking about.
Just gonna add it.
This up here,
Okay,
she wants to,
got it.
she wants to add where it says retention and
So-
expansion.
I do not, I would say to request to maintain an existing driveway connection.
But they're also asking to expand it by 3 feet.
Yeah, but that's a developmental thing.
Right.
We just talked about, so we don't have to put that into this part right now.
Right, so I would say to maintain.
Yes.
Okay. So then, having the ability to shift the curb cut or the driveway
That would be-
north to accommodate the landscape buffer is not an issue right now?
Where do you see the thing about, in this, about
I
making it
don't.
go to the north?
That's why I'm, in my
No.
recommendation, I had said,
Right.
so this would, if they're expanded and we're requiring the landscape buffer of 3 feet, then the ability to shift the driveway or the curb cut north to accommodate that,
Right.
they can do that also.
Well, I think I think what we'd be doing is saying, you get the retention of that driveway. And then when a plan comes in, they may say, hey, we would like to make it wider or move it or whatever. And you all can say, fine, as long as we have that 3-foot buffer, we can deal with that, correct? And so there doesn't have to be specifics in this about going to the north or whatever. I mean, arguably the developer could come in, they say they might want to move the driveway to the north side of the property. I don't know.
So we
That
need
might be
to,
something we'd have to consider.
we would need to strike that word expand on the
Yeah.
third sentence
Correct.
down.
Right.
So we're
Maintain.
recommending the request to maintain the existing driveway.
Yes. So then retention and expansion of this driveway, so it'll be instead retention of this driveway instead of, and expansion.
Right. Okay, so I was saying, in number 1, I don't like that it says that we are finding that they've met the criteria for issuance of unnecessary. I think that should say that we find that the applicant,
Met some of the criteria?
well, I would, if you all agree with me, I don't believe they fulfill the requirements of sub 1 or sub 2, which has to do with the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. or
Would you like
prior
that stricken in entirety? Would you like that stricken in entirety? I can understand where it might not necessarily fall within that. We're in a rush to copy paste.
Yes, of course.
So I think it might behoove us to just strike it altogether,
All of number 1?
all of number 1, and just get specifically into the conditions and the nitty-gritty that you guys are requesting.
Or could it be stated, the subject request is found not to have met the hardship
But if
variance?
you find it, and I don't know, I'll go to the city attorney on this, but it's not necessarily your position as the Historic Preservation Board. That would be more under the duties of the Board of Adjustment. So I'm more leaning to striking it because that's not really under your discretion, whether they meet it or they don't meet it necessarily.
I agree that we could strike the whole thing. That makes sense. What I'm concerned about, and let's talk about this, is whether or not, I want the board to know we are doing that. Our recommendation is basically done from a position of compromise, as from a position of agreeing that the variance is necessary. So, my point would be, if these conditions couldn't be met and everybody was playing hardball in some way, then I would be recommending, and I don't know what the board would do, I would be making a motion that we just deny it because they
And you
haven't
could do
met-
that.
Right,
That's
because
within
they
your
haven't met
purview.
numbers 2 or 6. So what I'd like to make it clear to the board is, we think there is insufficient evidence as of sections 2 and 6, but in the spirit of compromise and in the fact that we can make a recommendation with a condition, this is why we're making these recommendations. And so I don't know where, I don't know, y'all agree with that? And so,
So I'd move the first sentence of condition number 1 up and out of the conditions.
Yep.
Put it before number 1.
Oh, what I just talked about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we would say that the Historic Preservation Board makes a recommendation that although the subject request may not have met criteria or may not have demonstrated sufficient evidence to meet criteria for general variances in section 3.12, parent B, parent 1, parent A, I think you said 1, 2, and 6.
No, I just said 2 and 6.
Okay, you said 1, so I'll
said
take 1
one.
out and just go 2 and 6. And then we'll go back to the existing sentence.
And
They recommend, even though they may not have
I would not-
sufficient
I-
evidence to meet these sections, that section number I read, the board nevertheless recommends the following conditions if the Board of Adjustment approves the variance.
Yes. The only word
It's
I would
really their job to weigh those factors in.
Of course, it's just a recommendation, right? But I would suggest too that you use the word may not have met those. And I think, I don't know, we can talk about that. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think they did meet those.
That's up to you guys,
Right.
what word you want.
Do you all agree with that?
I would agree.
Yes.
Okay, so let's change that word.
Has not met,
Yeah,
Yes.
and nevertheless,
right. Under our ability, or under the abilities of the board of, to do a granting with conditions, this is our recommendation.
then one more, like Brandon, where it says shall nullify, maybe shall, put the nullify at the end, and say shall render the subject variance approval null and void.
Where are we talking about adding that?
Last sentence of condition number 1, just nullify is not really as good a term as shall render null and void. Trying to get away from the word nullify.
So what we just talked about, Mr. Brooks, is we're making that number 1 as opposed to adding it to the
No, it should be
first
taken,
paragraph?
should be taken out of 1 because 1 is a condition. So it would be adding it to the first paragraph before number 1. You have 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, those are conditions. So you would introduce your conditions by saying the HPB finds that it has not met section 2 and 6, blah, blah, blah. Nevertheless, if the Board of Adjustment approves the variance, HPB recommends the following conditions.
And those conditions would be,
1, 2, 3, 4. They're listed there. After a colon, then.
No, I know, but we're eliminating one. We just talked about how one's not necessary. So two, wouldn't two
Well,
become
you're
one?
not eliminating the second sentence of one. Just the first, moving the first sentence.
So we're leaving the part that says acquisition of additional property to the subject zoning lot?
Yeah. Because if they have some other route to get in and out for some other development plan.
Gotcha.
Then you
Okay.
don't need this
Okay,
variance.
I got you. All right. Everybody agree with that
Yeah.
scenario? All right. Everybody satisfied with how number 5 is written on the back page?
I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yep. Okay. Okay, so what we need to just zip up another copy?
I think we can go ahead with this
Okay.
now, if you're
So-
okay.
All right.
Are we gonna take a break and have it,
I don't think so. We're talking about just go ahead and go through the motion, you've got the language.
I think we have enough now.
Pardon me?
We could do that if you'd like.
Yeah, well, I know.
I personally would like to see the changes
Okay.
before I,
Want to take another break?
Sure. So
sorry.
That's fine. Do you want to talk about?
Just one point of clarification. Condition 3 is the recommendation of the board that there be a 3-foot landscaping buffer and a fence or wall, or would you still allow the options, but they need at least the 3-foot landscaping buffer? Is that what I heard?
Well, that's what I would prefer. I know this was a recommendation by you, I mean by staff, and it seems to me in that neighborhood, and being the residents to the south of it, I would, but y'all think, I would prefer there be a 3-foot wide landscaping buffer regardless of whether there's a fence or not.
I feel it's fine the way it is. I feel the fence is the better buffer than a bush.
How do you feel about that?
I personally would like to see some shrubbery or something, because I think we're gonna see enough walls.
Well, I think Mr. Teckenbrough had a good point. That property is how long, to do shrubbery all the way down to the back of it, is quite a bit,
Better part of
Well-
150.
And if you're limiting it to the existing driveway, there may not be enough room for 3 feet of
Okay.
landscaping.
And
So
I think it
then-
has an existing fence.
Well, here's the deal, okay, if new development comes in and they want they're asking to make the driveway wider or whatever, well, then we can always ask that to be a condition, to add shrubbery and things of that nature. I think Mr. Hurley has a good point, that the fence might be sufficient for what they have, so I would just leave it the way it is, because then it's an and/or scenario.
Well, it's a fence, a wall, or shrubbery, or a combination of all of them.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I just leave that, all right?
Thank you.
So we're gonna take, Brandon, you're our timer. How many minutes thinking you want? 10?
Might need a couple more minutes
Yeah,
than
let's
that.
do 15 if we can.
All right, then
please.
we'll just take a break for 15 minutes. Thank you so much. All right, has everyone had an opportunity to read this new and improved version?
Yes.
Anybody have any comments or questions about it?
I just had one thing,
Yes.
looking at this again. So in your recommendation, that underlined second sentence,
Yes?
nevertheless, the Historic Preservation Board recommends approval to maintain the existing driveway connection, only if the following 5 conditions are included in the approval.
Okay, so to maintain the existing driveway, is that what you said?
Yeah,
That was it? I mean, that was.
yeah, because you were taking out the expander.
Oh, no, I agree with you
Okay.
putting it there, but just want to make sure I can write it down. So the Historic Preservation Board recommends approval to maintain the existing driveway
Connection only if.
connection. Okay. Brandon, Barry, question. I know earlier you said that this recommendation will be given to the Board of Adjustment at the meeting tomorrow. Will you post or email it before then? The reason I ask that is there's obviously a lot of citizens that have paid attention or have been paying attention. I think they'd be interested to know what our recommendation is without having to show up at the meeting, I guess is what I'm saying.
We can talk to the clerk, right, about whether they can add it? Do you know, Ariana, if they can add a document to the agenda packet for tomorrow?
We can, but it would need to be re-amended and republished.
In addition, I will say that staff has multiple, and as we've been sitting here, receiving emails of letters, either just from, that we have not been able to get to. So I know I have a packet of at least 33 as of yesterday evening, that we will probably try to email out to them tonight, just because of the mass quantity.
And you could include that in that.
And we can include that in that.
Okay.
To be provided to the
I think
board.
that does it without having to get
Yeah.
too complicated or cause too much issue. Okay.
Staff will try to do that before commission tonight.
Or, yeah, and, yeah, I know there's a lot of stuff you've been doing. And I would even think if you get it done in the morning, that's fine, just because the meeting's at 2, right? Tomorrow?
It is at 2, correct.
And if you can't, you can't. I'm just asking. Okay, all right. All right, so-
We're talking about the meeting tomorrow. I need to request 3 items prior to the meeting. Can I do that now, please? Can't seem to find the right time.
Is this regard to the Board of Adjustment application? Why don't you contact staff, or we can contact you after, so it's not part of this meeting?
Well, because some of the information that I need is relevant to what we're doing right now. If I could just real quick, the 3 things I need first, to Mr. Chairman, we need a copy of the historical board's guidelines for design, architecture, and landscaping in Paso whatever's codified. Can you send that to me?
Those go through the public records custodian, but we'll do that. This isn't really part, the public records requests are what you need, we can address after the meeting.
Okay, the second thing is we're doing recommendations for the board tomorrow, and this is a recommendation from the historical board, which is adding conditions that are not historical items. So I need to see the guidelines from the city code that the historical board has purview to make recommendations on non-historic topics. That's the second thing, and then the third thing also for the city, entering the meeting tomorrow, there's gonna be talk about right-hand turn only and giving up street parking passes. We need to see whatever precedent there is in the history of Paso Road where developers have been asked to do that in the past. We're not aware of any precedent, we'd like to know what other condo buildings gotta have right turn only and how to give up street parking. Those are the 3 things, thank you so much.
How would you like that handled?
I was gonna say, did you want to continue this for something so you can get that information? If they can't provide it to you that fast?
No, we do not want to continue the meeting. I'd like to have the information before the meeting tomorrow.
Okay, well, because a lot of that stuff has been available that you could have just looked up in preparation for this. You could have looked up the historic board information, things of that nature.
Okay, we'll just treat that as a public records request and move forward.
All right. Okay, so we're back to Holly's motion, I believe, and so go ahead. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I have one question. Just on bullet point 5, where it says architectural renderings are to be provided, should that be shall be?
That's fine. You can go to shall.
Thank you. Okay.
That's it for me.
Can I
Yes.
borrow yours with the addition?
Well, before we get to this, okay, sorry. Do we need to read all this out for the motion, or can
Let's see,
Holly make,
let's see if Holly has something else she wants to add.
okay, make the motion based on the document we have, you follow what I'm saying, so we don't have to repeat the whole thing?
With the addition of these words?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's have you read the whole thing, because not everyone in the public or watching on TV has a copy of this.
Good point.
Read the whole thing.
Yes, please. We're
Okay.
beginning the word as authorized.
Can you read my additional handwriting there?
Yes, And
Make a
where-
motion to make the following recommendation, and then just read everything.
Okay, and then I also have 2 modifications, 2.
You need to
So
talk
I
about.
We have to do that.
Talk about them first.
Yeah.
And then at the end, saying I'd like to add,
No, let's.
What are the
tell me what your modifications are now
Okay,
before we make
so-
the motion, so we can have a clean motion.
I would like to reread the motion in its entirety.
Well, but what are the modifications that you want to do?
Okay, so at the blurb that's up top, and it starts with as authorized by the January 13, 2026, at the last line where it says, nonetheless, the Historic Preservation Board recommends approval to maintain the existing driveway connection only if the following 5 conditions are included in the approval. So the addition to that is to maintain the existing driveway connection only if all the following 5 conditions are included.
Yes, I see what she's, no, yes, what you want to do is just go ahead and, you don't want to change anything, you just want to make sure that that's added to it.
That's added to.
So that's what you're going to do, you're going to do the motion, but you're going to read the whole thing, including the things we just
Yes.
wrote onto that.
Yes.
Okay.
And then on point 5,
Yes, thank you.
architectural renderings shall, as opposed to are.
Yes.
Okay, everybody got that? Okay. So, let me take a drink of water and. Okay, rereading of my original motion with some updates.
Let's withdraw your prior motion and make a motion to approve as follows.
Okay, I make a motion to approve as follows for variance case number 25142 to the Board of Adjustment, the following. As authorized at the January 13th, 2026 regular meeting of the City Commission, staff requested a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Board to the Board of Adjustment regarding the proposed unnecessary and undue hardship variance case number 25142, request to maintain an existing driveway connection from the property to Passagarrow Way following redevelopment of the property. The Historic Preservation finds that the subject variance request does not meet criteria 3.12.B1A.2 and 6 of the Land Development Code. Nevertheless, the Historic Preservation Board recommends approval to maintain the existing driveway connection only if the following 5 conditions are included in the approval. Point 1, acquisition of additional property to the subject zoning lot currently comprised of Lot 17, Block 6, Morey Beach subdivision, or change in use of the property that is associated with new construction or redevelopment of one or more primary use buildings on the property shall render the subject variance approval null and void. Point 2, the development shall be installed with a right turn only sign at the egress from the property to Paso Girl Way. Point 3, a 3-foot wide landscape buffer containing appropriate shrubs, hedge, and trees, or fence or wall compatible with the architecture of the development shall be installed along the entire southern side of the retained driveway. The buffer, fence, or wall shall be installed at least 5 feet in height, except where in conflict with the visibility standards of Land Development Code, Section 6.21, or where actual and documented site visibility issues are present. Point 4, while the subject driveway access to Paso Girl Way is utilized for site access, the lodging development shall be permitted no on-street 4B-H tags, otherwise authorized by Section 82-202 of the Code of Ordinances, as may be amended. Point 5, architectural renderings shall be provided for design review of future development by the Historic Preservation Board prior to the site plan approval.
Is there a second?
I just have a quick
Didn't get
question.
a second.
Okay, hold on, just got a question before we get
That was an excellent job, but there's just the one thing of to maintain the existing driveway. Mr. Brooks, I think that was one thing that you had called out versus an existing driveway.
We have the,
So if it could just be the versus,
So your question, she had said and you want to say the?
yes, please, maintain the existing driveway.
Do you have a any problem with that? You'll have to explain to the motion
Third
maker.
line,
If the motion maker finds that's okay, then that will be
Third
okay.
line where?
It's
about halfway through the sentence.
request to maintain the existing driveway versus an existing driveway. So it's the first,
Yes, so it should
It's
say
the added language to maintain the existing driveway connection, rather than saying to maintain an existing driveway connection.
Yeah. I think I did say it.
first paragraph, last line.
Okay,
That was the one you were reading off of, this one, that's why I put it back on there, so it's just changing the one word to the.
right,
request to maintain the existing driveway.
yes.
Okay. So I
Modify your motion to accommodate
make a
the request.
motion to amend.
To accommodate the request. Yeah. I accept the change to my motion and restate and reaffirm my motion with the change. And then we need a second,
Okay.
if that's acceptable to
I'm
you.
requesting to amend my motion.
Not requesting, I amend my motion
I amend my motion
to accept the request.
To accept the request.
to accept your request
Gotta be-
To change the word "and" to "the."
to change the word "and" to "the" on, should I just reread the entire sentence?
It's
Okay.
just the first paragraph, last sentence.
You can reread the whole
First paragraph.
sentence if you like.
Okay. And then, yes, so change the word "and" to "the" existing driveway connection on line 3.
The first paragraph, right?
And that's it? Okay.
Yep. Okay, I'll second the motion. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Hurley,
Yes.
Member Daschle,
Yes.
Member Young,
Yes.
Chair Lowry,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you all for your extreme patience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gonna adjourn the meeting?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Meeting adjourned.